The crack of a Winchester echoed across the New Mexico desert like thunder from hell itself. Three men lay dead in the sand, their blood painting crimson patterns in the dust. And at the center of the carnage, a woman crawled on broken fingernails toward salvation. She'd never reach, not without help. In 1893, the desert kept its secrets buried deep, but some secrets refused to stay dead. Caleb Mercer was about to learn that the past you run from has a way of finding you when you least expect it. Stay with me, friends, as we unravel a tale of redemption written in blood and courage. Drop a comment with your city below. I'd love to know how far this story travels tonight. The sun hung like a brass medallion in the cloudless sky, beating down on the weathered boards of Caleb Mercer's ranch house with the relentless fury that only August in New Mexico could muster. He stood on his porch, coffee growing cold in his hand, watching dust devils dance across the barren landscape he'd called home for the past 7 years. 7 years since he'd hung up his guns. 7 years since he'd sworn never to take another life. The gunfire shattered that morning's peace like a stone through cathedral glass. 3 shots, rapid succession, maybe 2 miles north. Then silence the kind that pressed against your eardrums and made your skin crawl. Caleb's fingers tightened on the coffee mug until his knuckles went white. Just hunters, he told himself, or rustlers settling a score. None of his business. Not anymore. But then came the 4th shot, delayed, deliberate. An execution shot. "Damn it all to hell," he muttered, setting the mug on the porch rail with excessive care, as if that small act of control could keep the violence at bay. His boots carried him to the barn before his mind could form a proper objection. The rifle was where he'd left it, wrapped in oilcloth hidden behind loose boards in the wall. The Winchester Model 1873 felt heavier than he remembered, or maybe that was just the weight of broken promises. He checked the action smooth as silk despite the years and loaded 15 rounds into the magazine. Just to look, he promised himself, just to make sure trouble wasn't heading his way. The horse, a gray mare named Sage, seemed to sense his unease dancing sideways as he saddled her. "Easy, girl," he murmured, though the words were meant as much for himself as for the animal. "We're just going for a ride. Nothing more." The desert stretched before him, an ocean of sage and sand broken only by occasional outcroppings of red rock. Caleb had learned to read this land like other men read books. Every shadow, every disturbed patch of earth told a story. Today's story was written in hoofprints deep and rushed at least 4 horses moving fast toward the northern canyons. He followed at a distance, keeping to the harder ground where his own tracks wouldn't show. The smell hit him first: copper and gunpowder. Death's calling cards. Then he saw them, 3 bodies sprawled in the sand like broken dolls, their blood already browning in the heat. Professional work, he noted, with the detached analysis that 7 years couldn't quite erase. 2 shot center mass, 1 in the head. The third had tried to run bullet in the back, then another when he was down. "Should have kept writing," Caleb said to no one, but his eyes were already scanning the scene, cataloging details. The dead men were hired guns by the look of them, matching dusters, good boots, better weapons. Their horses were gone spooked or stolen, and there in the sand, drag marks. Leading behind a cluster of rocks. Caleb dismounted slowly, rifle ready, though every instinct screamed at him to get back on Sage and ride hard in the opposite direction. The marks were fresh, maybe 20 minutes old. Blood droplets led the way like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale, though this was no children's story. He rounded the rocks and found her. She couldn't have been more than 25, though it was hard to tell through the bruises that painted her face in shades of purple and yellow. Her dress, once fine blue cotton, was torn and filthy. She dragged herself into the shade, leaving a trail of blood from a gash in her side. Her breathing came in shallow, ragged gasps, and her lips were cracked and bleeding. When Caleb's shadow fell over her, her eyes snapped open, brown as desert earth and wild with terror. "Please," she whispered the word barely more than a breath. "Please don't. I'm filthy. Inside and out. Just make it quick." Something twisted in Caleb's chest, a feeling he'd thought dead and buried with his wife all those years ago. "I'm not here to hurt you, miss. Can you tell me your name?" She blinked, confusion replacing fear for a moment. "Isabel. Isabel Hartwell. Are you with them?" "No, ma'am. I'm just a rancher who heard gunshots, Caleb Mercer." He knelt beside her, setting the rifle within reach but keeping his hands visible and slow. That's a nasty cut. We need to get you somewhere safe, get you patched up. Safe? She laughed, a broken sound that ended in a cough that brought blood to her lips. There's no safe, not from them. They'll come. They always come. Who's they? Miss Hartwell. But she was already fading, consciousness slipping away like water through fingers. Caleb made a decision he knew he'd regret, scooping her up with a gentleness that surprised him. She weighed almost nothing, bird bones and determination. Come on, Sage, he said to his horse. Looks like our quiet life just ended. The ride back to the ranch was the longest 2 miles of Caleb's life. Isabel drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering fragments that made no sense, something about children, about sellers, about a judge. Her blood seeped through his shirt, warm and sticky against his chest. Sage picked her way carefully across the desert, as if understanding the precious cargo she carried. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun had climbed higher, turning the air into a shimmering furnace. Caleb carried Isabel inside, laying her on the bed in what had been his wife's sewing room. He hadn't been able to bring himself to change it in 7 years, and now it would serve a purpose again. The wound in her side was deep but clean, missing anything vital by what looked like pure luck. Or maybe not luck. The angle suggested she'd twisted at the last second, turning a killing blow into merely a terrible one. This woman had fought for her life. Caleb worked with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd stitched too many wounds in his lifetime. Boiled water clean-clothed the needle and thread he kept for emergencies. Isabel came to when he cleaned the wound with whiskey, her scream cutting through the quiet house like a blade. I'm sorry, he said, holding her down as gently as possible. I'm sorry, but this has to be done. The children, she gasped between gritted teeth. Someone has to know about the children. What children? But she was gone. Again retreated into whatever darkness offered escape from the pain. Caleb finished his work in silence, his mind turning over the puzzle she presented. A woman of obvious quality, her hands were soft despite recent hardship. Her accent educated Eastern. Chicago, maybe, or Boston. The kind of woman who should be teaching piano to wealthy children not bleeding out in the New Mexico desert. He was just finishing the bandage when he heard horses approaching. Multiple horses moving fast. Caleb grabbed the Winchester and moved to the window, using the barrel to push aside the curtain just enough to see. 4 riders wearing the same type of dusters as the dead men. They'd found the bodies, followed the blood trail, and now they were here. Mercer, one called out voice carrying across the yard. Caleb Mercer. We know you're in there. We're looking for someone might have gotten lost. A woman. You seen anyone like that? Caleb recognized the type hired guns trying to sound official reasonable. The kind of men who'd smile while they gutted you. He checked the rifle's load again habit more than necessity. Nobody here but me, he called back. And I like it that way. You boys best move along. Now, Mr. Mercer, we don't want any trouble. We're working for Judge Montgomery down in Santa Fe. This woman, she's wanted for questioning in a serious matter, harboring a fugitive that's a hanging offense. Judge Montgomery. Caleb knew the name, everybody in the territory did. The kind of judge who'd find you guilty on Monday and attend your hanging on Tuesday with a smile. But something about this didn't add up. Since when did judges send hired killers to retrieve witnesses? Like I said, nobody here. You want to discuss it further, come back with a warrant. There was a long pause, then the sound of leather creaking as men shifted in their saddles. We'll be back, Mercer, and next time we won't ask so polite. They rode off slowly, making sure he saw them looking at the house, memorizing details. Caleb waited until the dust settled before moving away from the window. Isabel's eyes were open when he returned to the sewing room, watching him with a clarity that hadn't been there before. They're gone, he said, for now. You should have let them take me. Her voice was stronger, though still rough. You don't know what you've done, what you've brought to your door. Why don't you tell me then? Start with why Judge Montgomery sends hired killers after a woman who looks like she should be teaching Sunday school. She tried to sit up, gasped, and fell back. Caleb moved to help her, propping pillows behind her back. This close he could see she'd once been beautiful, high cheekbones, delicate features. The bruises couldn't hide that entirely. I was a governess. She began, accepting the water he offered with trembling hands. For the Calhoun family outside Santa Fe. They hired me 6 months ago, brought me out from Chicago, said they had 3 children who needed educating. Rich family. Very. Mining money mostly. Mr. Calhoun was particular about his household. Everything had to be perfect. The children were to be seen at certain times, silent at others. I thought it was just strict parenting at first. She paused, staring at something beyond the walls of the small room. The children weren't theirs, she continued. I realized it slowly. They didn't look like the Calhouns didn't know basic family history, and they were terrified, not the normal fear of strict parents, but real terror. The youngest, a girl named Mary, she couldn't have been more than 6. She told me once that she missed her real mama, that the bad men took her from a train. Caleb felt something cold settle in his stomach. Kidnapped, all 3 of them, and they weren't the first. I started paying attention, listening when I shouldn't. The Calhouns would have children for a few months, then they'd disappear, sent to boarding school, they'd say. But new ones would arrive, always young, always beautiful, always terrified. And the judge, he'd visit regularly. He and Mr. Calhoun would go to the study, lock the door. But I heard them once arguing about prices, about shipping costs to Mexico, about which ones were worth more. Her voice broke. They were selling them, children, selling them like cattle. The room seemed to shrink around them, the weight of her words pressing down like the desert heat. Caleb had seen a lot of evil in his time, had contributed his share of it, but this was something else entirely. So you ran. I tried to take them with me. God help me, I tried. I drugged the housekeeper's evening tea, waited until the family was at their weekly social in town. I got the children to the stable, had them on horses. We were so close. Tears ran down her cheeks, cutting clean tracks through the dirt and dried blood. But Garrett, Mr. Calhoun's man, he came back early, caught us at the gate. Garrett. Caleb knew that name, and the recognition must have shown on his face. You know him. Jake Garrett. Used to run with the Morrison gang before they got themselves hanged. Torture was his specialty, liked to make it last. If he's Calhoun's man now. He took the children back. Made them watch while he taught me a lesson about interfering. Then he let me run. Said it would be more fun to hunt me down, that I wouldn't get far. She touched her side where the wound was. He was right. Those men caught up with me this morning. I thought it was over. Then they started fighting among themselves about who would get to have me first. I grabbed one of their guns while they were distracted. I'd never shot anyone before today. You killed all 3. A hard smile crossed her face, transforming her for a moment into someone else entirely. My father was an army officer before he became a teacher. He insisted I learn to shoot, said a woman should be able to defend herself. I never thought, but yes, I killed them, and I'd do it again. Caleb stood pacing to the window and back. Every instinct told him to put her on a horse and send her away. He'd built this quiet life deliberately, carefully, a fortress of solitude against the violence of his past. But looking at her broken but not beaten, terrified but still fighting, he saw an echo of another woman, one who died because he hadn't been there to protect her. Mr. Mercer, Isabel said softly. Caleb, I know what I'm asking by being here. I can see it in your eyes, you've got your own ghosts. But those children, Mary and the others, someone has to stop this. And you think that someone is you. You can barely sit up. Then help me. Please. I have nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. The law won't help. Judge Montgomery is the law in these parts. The Calhouns own half the territory. But maybe if we could get evidence, get it to the territorial governor or even to Washington. Evidence. What kind of evidence? Garrett keeps records. I saw them once, a portfolio in Calhoun's study. Names, dates, prices. Where the children came from, where they went. He's meticulous about it, proud even, like it's just another business venture. Caleb turned to look at her fully. You're talking about going up against one of the most powerful families in New Mexico, a corrupt judge and a sadistic killer who's already tried to kill you once. That's not brave, Miss Hartwell. That's suicide. Then what would you have me do? Run, hide, let them keep stealing children, selling them to God knows what fate. She tried to stand, gasped, and grabbed the bedpost for support. I can't live with that. I won't. Before Caleb could respond, Sage whinnied outside her warning call. He grabbed the rifle and moved to the window in one fluid motion. A lone rider approached, moving slow, hands visible. Not one of Garrett's men, this one wore the clothes of a working cowboy, not a hired gun. "Stay here," Caleb ordered, heading for the door. The rider stopped well back from the house, keeping his hands on the saddle horn. He was young, maybe 20, with the sun-weathered face of someone who'd grown up in the territory. "Mr. Mercer, name's Tom Bradley. I ride for the Twisted Creek outfit about 10 miles south." "I know the brand. What brings you here, Tom?" "Wanted to warn you, sir. Saw a group of riders heading this way from town, maybe a dozen men. They were asking about you at the saloon, whether you still lived out here alone. Figured you should know." A dozen men. Garrett wasn't taking chances. "Appreciate the warning, Tom. You best head back now before you're seen here." The young man hesitated. "Mr. Mercer, I don't mean to pry, but my pa, he told me about you. About what you used to be. If trouble's coming, maybe you need help. What I need is for good men to stay out of this. Get home, Tom, and if anyone asks you, we're never here." Tom nodded, wheeling his horse around. "Good luck, Mr. Mercer." Caleb watched him ride away, then went back inside. Isabel had managed to dress herself in an old shirt and pants he'd left in the room, probably Sarah's brother's clothes left behind years ago. They hung loose on her frame, but she looked steadier on her feet. "We're leaving, aren't we?" she asked. "A dozen men coming, probably be here by nightfall. This house is defensible, but not against those numbers, not with you wounded." "Where will we go?" Caleb considered their options. Town was out too many of Calhoun's people. The mountains to the east were rough but offered cover, and he knew places, their hidden spots from his old life where a man could disappear if he needed to. "Can you ride?" "I'll manage." He studied her face, saw the determination there, despite the pain she was clearly in. "There's an old mining camp in the Sangre de Cristo range, about a day's ride if we push it. Abandoned now, but there's shelter water. We can figure out our next move from there." "Our next move. You're going to help me." Caleb started gathering supplies, ammunition, food, medical supplies, the gold coins he kept hidden under a loose floorboard. "I'm going to keep you alive. That's all I'm promising for now." While he packed, Isabel told him more about the Calhoun operation. The children came from all over orphan trains, indigenous communities, Mexican border towns. Kids nobody would miss or whose parents couldn't fight back. They were kept in the basement of the Calhoun mansion at first, trained to be perfect little ladies and gentlemen. The ones who couldn't be broken disappeared. "How many?" Caleb asked, checking the loads in a pair of Colt 45s he hadn't worn in 7 years. "In the 6 months I was there, at least 20 passed through. Some stayed longer than others. The pretty ones, the smart ones, they brought higher prices. And nobody in Santa Fe suspects os. Oh, they suspect. But suspecting and caring are different things. And the ones who might care are too scared of Judge Montgomery to act. He sent more than one person to the gallows for spreading seditious lies." Caleb strapped on the gun belt, the weight of it familiar and unwelcome. "Get to the barn. I'll bring the supplies." They worked quickly, saddling Sage and a second horse, a sturdy paint named Brick. Isabel moved stiffly, but didn't complain even when mounting clearly caused her pain. The sun was starting its descent toward the western mountains, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. "Mr. Mercer," Isabel said as they prepared to ride out, "why are you doing this, really?" He looked back at the house he'd called home for 7 years, knowing he'd likely never see it again. Or if he did, it would be burnt to the ground. "My wife died 8 years ago," he said quietly. "Sarah. She was in Silver City visiting her sister. I was supposed to go with her, but I was tracking a bounty, thought the money was more important. While she was there, a gang rode through the Bloody Knife Boys. They robbed the bank, shot anyone who got in their way. Sarah was just crossing the street. Wrong place, wrong time. I'm sorry. I hunted them down. Every last one. Took me 6 months, but I found them all. When I was done, when I'd painted half of New Mexico with their blood, you know what I realized? Sarah was still dead. The killing didn't bring her back, didn't make the pain go away, just added to it. So I hung up my guns, bought this place, tried to find some peace." He turned to look at Isabel, really look at her. "But peace built on ignored suffering isn't really peace, is it? It's just cowardice with a prettier name." They rode out as the shadows grew long, two figures against the vastness of the desert. Behind them, dust rose on the horizon, riders coming fast. Caleb urged the horses into a ground-eating lope, choosing his path carefully. The mountains rose before them, dark and forbidding, promising safety or death with equal indifference. "Can we make it?" Isabel asked, looking back at the pursuing dust cloud. "We'll make it," Caleb said with more confidence than he felt. "The question is what happens after." They rode through the gathering dusk, the desert giving way to scrub pine and juniper as they climbed into the foothills. Caleb knew these trails had used them in his hunting days when he needed to disappear, but that was years ago when he was younger, when he was alone. Now he had a wounded woman to protect and a dozen killers on his trail. The first shot came just as full dark fell the bullet whining off a rock to their left. Too far for accuracy, but close enough to let them know the chase was on. "Keep low," Caleb shouted, spurring Sage up a steep switchback. "And whatever happens, don't stop." More shots followed, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness behind them like deadly fireflies. Isabel rode grimly, her face pale in the moonlight, but her jaw set with determination. Blood had started seeping through her bandage again. Caleb could see the dark stain spreading across her shirt. They crested a ridge and Caleb pulled up sharp, wheeling Sage around. "Keep going," he told Isabel. "Follow the trail north. Look for a formation that looks like a broken tooth. The camp is just beyond it. I'll catch up." "What are you—" "Go now." She went disappearing into the darkness. Caleb dismounted, pulling the Winchester from its scabbard. The pursuers would have to come up the same trail. It was the only way that horses could manage. He found a good position behind a fallen log, settling the rifle against his shoulder. The first rider appeared minutes later, silhouetted against the stars. Caleb's shot took him center mass, sending him tumbling backward off his horse. The second rider tried to turn back, but the trail was too narrow. Caleb's next shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around but not killing him. Shouts from below, confusion. They hadn't expected their prey to turn and fight. Caleb fired 3 more quick shots, not aiming to kill, now just to sow chaos. Horses screamed, men cursed, and for a moment the pursuit faltered. It was all the time he needed. Caleb mounted Sage and rode hard after Isabel, finding her waiting just beyond the broken tooth formation, pistol drawn. "I told you to keep going. And I ignored you. Are they—" "Delayed, not stopped. Come on." The mining camp appeared out of the darkness like a ghost town, which essentially it was. A dozen buildings in various states of decay, abandoned when the silver played out 15 years ago. Caleb led them to the most intact structure, an old assay office built of stone with a solid door and windows that could be shuttered. Inside it was dusty but dry. Caleb barred the door while Isabel collapsed onto an ancient cot, her breathing ragged. "Let me see that wound." The bandage was soaked through. The ride had torn some of the stitches. Caleb worked by lamplight, cleaning and rebandaging, trying to ignore the way Isabel bit her lip to keep from crying out. "This can't continue," he said. "You need real medical attention, rest. What I need is to stop them. Those children will be just as lost if you die trying to save them. We need a plan, and we need help." "Who would help us?" "You said yourself going against the Calhouns is suicide." Caleb finished with the bandage, sitting back on his heels. "Maybe. But I know some people, old acquaintances from my previous life. Not all of them were bad men, just men in a bad profession. And some of them have no love for child slavers. Outlaws." "You want to recruit outlaws?" "Sometimes it takes a sinner to stop a devil, Miss Hartwell. The righteous folk of Santa Fe aren't lining up to help, are they?" Before she could respond, they heard horses outside. Many horses. The pursuit had caught up. "Mercer," Garrett's voice unmistakable. Caleb had heard it once years ago, when their paths had briefly crossed, the kind of voice that enjoyed pain. "I know you're in there. You and the woman. Come out now and I'll make it quick. Make me come in after you and you'll beg for death before I'm done." Caleb checked his weapons. The Winchester had 8 rounds left, plus the 2 Colts with full cylinders. Not enough for a dozen men, not nearly enough. "You've got one chance to ride away Garrett," he called back. "Take it." Laughter cold and sharp. "You always were a prideful son of a bitch, Mercer. Heard about you, of course. The great Caleb Mercer, hunter of men. But that was a long time ago, wasn't it? You've gone soft playing rancher. Probably forgotten which end of the gun the bullets come out of. Only one way to find out." True enough. Boys burn them out. Caleb heard the splash of kerosene against the walls, smelled its sharp tang. Isabel struggled to her feet, grabbing one of the Colts. Can you shoot with that, Tom? Caleb asked. Well enough. There's a root cellar in the back corner under those boards. If things go bad, we go together or not at all. The first flames licked at the windows, casting dancing shadows through the shutters. Smoke began seeping through the cracks in the walls. They didn't have long. On 3, we go out the back window, Caleb said. There's good cover in the rocks behind the building. We might... The front door exploded inward, kicked off its hinges. 3 men rushed in, guns blazing. Caleb's Winchester spoke twice, dropping 2 of them. Isabel's Colt boomed, catching the 3rd in the chest. But more were coming, and the smoke was getting thicker. They fought their way to the back window, Caleb firing controlled shots while Isabel reloaded. A bullet creased his ribs, another took his hat off. Isabel cried out as a shot grazed her arm but kept shooting. Just as they reached the window, Garrett himself appeared in the doorway, grinning like a skull. Going somewhere. Caleb shoved Isabel through the window and turned, firing the last round from the Winchester. It caught Garrett in the shoulder, spinning him around but not dropping him. Caleb dove through the window as return fire shredded the frame. They ran for the rocks, bullets whining around them. Isabel stumbled and Caleb caught her, half carrying her to cover. Blood ran down her arm and her face was gray with pain and smoke inhalation. How many did we get? She gasped. Not enough. Never enough. The remaining men spread out surrounding their position. The burning building cast everything in hellish light, making shadows jump and dance. Caleb could count muzzle flashes, 8, maybe 9 left. Plus Garrett wounded but still very much alive and angry. You're making this so much more fun, Mercer, Garrett called out. I was just going to kill you quick, but now I'm going to take my time with both of you. The woman especially. She cost me 3 good men this morning. She needs to learn what happens to bitches who don't know their place. Isabel started to rise, fury overcoming sense, but Caleb pulled her down. That's what he wants. Stay calm. Stay ready. For what? We're outnumbered, outgunned. Not yet. A shot rang out from somewhere beyond the burning building. Then another, but these weren't aimed at Caleb and Isabel. One of Garrett's men spun and fell, clutching his chest. What the hell? What? Garrett roared. Who's shooting? More gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Caleb recognized the sound of a Sharps rifle, the distinctive boom of a shotgun. Garrett's men, caught in the open, scrambled for cover. 2 more went down before they could find it. A familiar voice called out from the darkness. Caleb Mercer, you still alive in there? Caleb couldn't believe it. Sam Weathers, is that you? Me and a few friends. Heard you might need some help. Sam Weathers had ridden with Caleb years ago before Caleb went straight. Well, straighter. They'd parted on good terms, and Sam had always said he owed Caleb for saving his life in a gunfight in Tucson. The firefight intensified. Garrett's men, caught between 2 forces, tried to retreat to their horses. But whoever Sam had brought with him were good shots. Men fell, horses screamed, and within minutes the tide had turned. Garrett himself tried to flee, wounded shoulder and all, but as he ran past their position, Isabel stood, the Colt steady in her hands despite her injuries. This is for the children, she said, and pulled the trigger. The shot took Garrett in the knee, dropping him screaming to the ground. He rolled, trying to bring his gun up, but Caleb was already there, kicking it away. Don't kill me! Garrett gasped, all bravado gone. Please, I can pay you. Calhoun has money more than you can imagine. Blood money, Isabel said, standing over him. Built on the suffering of innocents. They're just orphans, Indians, Mexicans, nobody important. Isabel's boot caught him in his wounded shoulder and he screamed, Every child is important, every single one. Sam Weathers emerged from the darkness along with 3 other men Caleb recognized from the old days. Tom Bradley was with them too, the young cowboy who'd warned them earlier. Couldn't stay out of it, Tom said sheepishly. Not when I heard what it was really about. My sister went missing 2 years ago from Las Cruces. Now I'm wondering if maybe... How did you know we needed help? Caleb asked Sam. Sam grinned, his weathered face creasing. Young Tom here came, found me, said Caleb Mercer was about to take on a dozen hired guns to protect a woman. Figured you'd either gone crazy or found your conscience again. Either way, couldn't miss the show. The woman has a name, Isabel said coldly, and she can speak for herself. Sam tipped his hat. Apologies, ma'am. No offense meant. What do we do with this one? One of Sam's men asked, gesturing at Garrett. He's going to tell us everything, Isabel said, her voice hard as desert stone. About the Calhouns, the judge, where the children are, where they go. Everything. I won't tell you anything, Garrett spat. Isabel knelt beside him, pressing the Colt's barrel against his wounded knee. My father taught me anatomy as well as marksmanship, Mr. Garrett. I know exactly where to shoot to cause maximum pain without killing. Would you like a demonstration? Looking into her eyes, Garrett believed her. So did Caleb. This wasn't the frightened governess he'd found in the desert. This was someone reborn in fire and violence, transformed by necessity into something harder. All right, Garrett gasped. All right, I'll tell you. But it won't matter. Calhoun owns judges, senators, half the territorial government. You'll never touch him. We'll see about that, Caleb said. He turned to Sam. We need somewhere secure to question him, and medical supplies. I know a place. Old ranch about 5 miles north. Owner owes me favors. Sam looked at Isabel, who was swaying on her feet. Can she ride? I can ride, Isabel said, then proved herself a liar by collapsing. Caleb caught her before she hit the ground, scooping her up carefully. She'd lost too much blood, pushed herself too hard. But she was breathing, and her pulse, while weak, was steady. Tom, ride to Twisted Creek, get their doctor. Tell him whatever you have to, but get him to Sam's place. Yes, sir. As they prepared to move out, Caleb looked back at the burning building, at the bodies scattered around it. 7 years of peace gone in a single day. But looking down at Isabel's unconscious face, at the determination still visible even in sleep, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some fights you walked away from, others you stood your ground no matter the cost. And some fights like this one chose you. The doctor from Twisted Creek turned out to be a woman, which surprised everyone except Tom Bradley, who'd forgotten to mention that particular detail. Dr. Martha Chen arrived just before dawn, her medical bag in one hand and a Winchester in the other, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun that had seen better days after the hard ride. Where's my patient? She demanded, pushing past the men clustered on the porch of the old ranch house. Inside, ma'am, Caleb said, leading her to the bedroom where Isabel lay unconscious, her breathing shallow but steady. She's lost a lot of blood, got a deep wound in her side, another graze on her arm, and God knows what else. Dr. Chen set down her bag and began her examination with practiced efficiency. Everyone out? Except you. She pointed at Caleb. You'll assist me. The rest of you make yourselves useful elsewhere. Sam Weathers and his men filed out, taking the wounded Garrett with them to the barn for questioning. Tom Bradley stood guard outside, young face set with determination that made him look older than his 20 years. Hold her steady, Dr. Chen ordered, threading a needle with silk suture. This is going to take a while. For the next 2 hours, Caleb watched the doctor work, marveling at her skill. She cleaned and restitched the wound in Isabel's side, treated the arm graze, set 2 cracked ribs he hadn't even known about, and administered laudanum for the pain. She's tough, Dr. Chen observed, washing blood from her hands in a basin. Most women, most men would have given up by now. What's her story? It's complicated. It always is when men like you are involved, Mr. Mercer. Oh, don't look surprised. I know who you are. Treated enough of your bounties back in the day, men you brought in more dead than alive. That was a long time ago. Not so long that people have forgotten. Not so long that you've forgotten either, judging by the bodies Tom described at that mining camp. She dried her hands, studying him with sharp eyes. This woman, she's mixed up in something bad, isn't she? Something to do with the Calhouns. Caleb hesitated, then nodded. There was no point in lying to someone who'd risked riding through the night to help them. The Calhouns are trafficking children, selling them to Mexico, maybe further. Isabel was their governess, figured it out, tried to save them. Dr. Chen's face hardened. I wondered. There have been rumors, whispers, children disappearing from the poorer communities, especially the Mexican and Indian settlements. But nobody could prove anything, and nobody wanted to cross Judge Montgomery. You believe it. I delivered a baby girl to a Mexican family near Las Cruces 3 years ago. Beautiful child, bright as a penny. She disappeared 6 months later. Parents said she was taken right from their yard while playing. The sheriff barely investigated, said she probably wandered off, got lost in the desert. Dr. Chen's voice was bitter. But children don't just vanish, Mr. Mercer. Someone takes them. Isabel stirred, moaning softly. Dr. Chen measured out another dose of laudanum, helping her swallow it. She needs rest, the doctor said. At least a week, preferably 2. Moving her could kill her. We might not have a week. Once Calhoun realizes Garrett's not coming back, he'll send more men. Maybe even contact the army, claim we're outlaws terrorizing the territory. Then you'd better get proof of what they're doing, and fast. Without evidence, you're just another gang of killers in the eyes of the law. A commotion from the barn drew their attention. Sam Weathers appeared in the doorway, blood on his knuckles and satisfaction on his face. "Garrett's talking," he announced. "You're going to want to hear this." Caleb looked at Isabel, still unconscious, but breathing easier thanks to the laudanum. "Stay with her," he told Dr. Chen. "Please. Go. I'll watch over her." The barn smelled of hay and blood. Garrett was tied to a post, his face a mess of bruises and cuts. One of Sam's men, a half-Apache tracker named Jose, was heating a branding iron over a small fire. "Just for show," Sam said quietly to Caleb. "Haven't actually used it. Haven't needed to." Soon as he saw it heating up, he started singing like a church choir. Garrett raised his head, one eye swollen shut, the other filled with hate. "Mercer. Come to watch your friends torture an injured man." "Just here to listen," Caleb said, pulling up a crate to sit on. "Hear you've got things to say." "I already told them. The Calhouns have 3 kids at the house right now. We're planning to move them south next week. There's a buyer in Juarez runs a brothel." Garrett spat blood. "High-class place caters to rich Americans and Europeans. They pay premium for young, pretty English-speaking kids." Caleb's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his voice level. "Names. We need names. The kid's Mary. That's the youngest, about 6. Then there's James, maybe 8, and Rebecca 10 or 11. Don't know their last names. Calhoun never uses them." "What about the buyers, the network?" Garrett laughed a harsh sound. "You think Calhoun tells me everything? I'm just muscle-hired help. But I know there's a whole system. Kids come in through various sources, orphan trains that lose a few children along the way, Indian schools that report runaways, Mexican families who can't fight back when their babies disappear. And Judge Montgomery, he makes it all legal. Forged adoption papers, death certificates for kids who are very much alive, transfer documents. He's got a man in the Territorial Records Office who makes sure everything looks proper on paper." Tom Bradley, who'd been listening from the doorway, suddenly spoke up. "My sister, Lily Bradley, 15 years old, red hair, green eyes. Went missing from Las Cruces 2 years ago. You ever see her?" Garrett looked at him, something flickering in his good eye. "Red hair, pretty." "Answer him," Sam growled, hand moving to the branding iron. "There was a redhead about 2 years back, but she was trouble, kept trying to escape. They sent her on quickly, didn't keep her at the house long." "Where?" Tom's voice was desperate. "Where did they send her, sir?" "South. That's all I know. Once they leave the Calhoun place, I don't track them." Tom turned away, shoulders shaking. Jose put a hand on the young man's shoulder, murmuring something in Apache that sounded comforting. "The portfolio," Caleb said. "Isabel mentioned a portfolio with records. Where is it?" "Calhoun's study in a safe behind the portrait of his wife. Combination is his wedding date, June 15th, 1878, 6/15/78. Garrett grimaced. "He's sentimental about his wife. She doesn't know about the business. Thinks the kids really are charity cases they're helping. Or she chooses not to know," Sam said darkly. "Maybe. Either way, that portfolio has everything: names, dates, prices, contacts. Calhoun's too proud of his organization not to document it all. Calls it his empire." Caleb stood pacing the length of the barn. Getting into the Calhoun house would be near impossible. It was a fortress well guarded in the middle of Santa Fe's richest district. But without that portfolio, they had nothing but the word of a tortured man. "There's more," Garrett said suddenly. "A shipment. Not kids this time. Guns. Military rifles stolen from Fort Union. Calhoun's selling them to the same people who buy the kids using the same routes. It's supposed to happen in 3 days at Skeleton Canyon." "Why tell us this?" Caleb asked suspiciously. "Because I know I'm dead either way. Either you kill me or Calhoun kills me for talking. But those guns, they're going to be used to raid settlements, create chaos. More orphans for Calhoun to collect. Garrett raised his head, meeting Caleb's eyes. I'm a bastard mercer. I've done terrible things, but I was a soldier once fought for this country. Those guns getting into the wrong hands, that's a bridge too far even for me. Sam looked at Caleb. Could be a trap. Could be. But if it's not, and we could intercept those weapons, maybe trade them for the portfolio. That's not how Calhoun operates, Garrett said. He doesn't negotiate. But the man picking up the guns, Miguel Santana, he's another story. He's practical, might be willing to make a deal. Before Caleb could respond, Dr. Chen appeared in the barn doorway. She's awake, asking for you. Caleb followed the doctor back to the house, finding Isabel propped up in bed, her face pale but alert. The laudanum had taken the edge off her pain, but her eyes were clear-focused. Garrett talked, she asked without preamble. He did. The children are still at the house. There's also a gun shipment in 3 days we might be able to use as leverage. Isabel tried to sit up straighter, wincing. We have to get them out. Mary and the others, we can't wait 3 days. You can't even stand. And the Calhoun place is a fortress. We'd need an army. Or a better plan. She looked at Dr. Chen. You said you deliver babies all over the territory, including to wealthy families in Santa Fe. On occasion, yes. Have you ever been to the Calhoun house? Dr. Chen frowned, thinking. Once about a year ago, Mrs. Calhoun had a false pregnancy scare. Why, could you get in again? Say, Mrs. Calhoun called for you. Isabel? No, Caleb said, seeing where this was going. It's too dangerous. Listen to me. Dr. Chen goes to the house, says she's responding to an urgent call from Mrs. Calhoun. While she's there, she finds a way to get the children out. Maybe drugs the staff or... I won't put Dr. Chen in danger, Caleb interrupted. I'll do it, Dr. Chen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I've been patching up broken children for years, she continued, telling myself I was helping healing, but I never asked the hard questions about where these injuries came from, why so many children in certain communities had accidents. I looked the other way because it was easier, safer. She met Isabel's eyes. Not anymore. It's suicide, Caleb protested. Not if we're smart about it. Isabel's mind was clearly racing despite the laudanum. Doctor, you'll need a distraction, something to draw the guards away from the house. The gun shipment, Tom Bradley said from the doorway. What if some of us hit it early, make Calhoun think someone's trying to steal his weapons? He'd send men to protect it. Sam nodded slowly. Could work. Divide his forces. And while everyone's focused on the guns, I get the children out, Dr. Chen said. I'll need help once I'm clear of the house. I'll go with you, Isabel said. You can barely move. I can sit in a wagon. We'll need one anyway for the children. Isabel's jaw set stubbornly. Those children know me, trust me. They'll come with me when they might not go with a stranger. Caleb wanted to argue, but he could see the determination in her eyes. This wasn't just about saving children anymore. This was about redemption, hers, and maybe his too. All right, he said finally. But we do this carefully. Sam, you and your men scout the gun shipment location. Jose, find us the fastest routes out of Santa Fe once we have the kids. Tom, you're with me. We're going to pay Calhoun a visit. What? Isabel looked alarmed. Caleb, no. Not to fight, to negotiate. He doesn't know Garrett's talked yet. I'll tell him I have his man wounded but alive. Offer to trade him back for a price. While I'm keeping him busy at the front door, you all execute the plan at the back. He'll kill you the moment you show your face. Maybe, but he's also a businessman. He'll want to know what I know, who else knows it. That curiosity will buy us time. They spent the rest of the day planning, going over every detail. Dr. Chen would arrive at the Calhoun house at precisely 3 o'clock, claiming Mrs. Calhoun had sent for her. She'd have a bottle of chloroform hidden in her medical bag, ostensibly for medical purposes. Meanwhile, Sam and 2 men would create a disturbance at the warehouse where the guns were stored, drawing off guards. Caleb would approach the front of the Calhoun house at 3:30, giving Dr. Chen time to get inside and locate the children. Isabel would wait in a wagon 2 streets over with Tom Bradley as protection. Once, Doctor, Chen got the children out through the servants' entrance they'd rendezvous and head for the old mission at San Miguel where Jose would have fresh horses waiting. "It's got more holes than Swiss cheese," Sam observed that evening as they went over the plan one more time. "Most plans do," Caleb replied. "That's why we have contingencies. And if the contingencies fail, then we improvise." Isabel had been quiet for the past hour, the laudanum wearing off and pain returning. But when Caleb checked on her, her eyes were bright with something beyond fever. "I need to tell you something," she said, in case tomorrow goes wrong." "It won't." "Please, just listen." She struggled to sit up and he helped her careful of her injuries. "My father wasn't just an army officer. He worked for the Secret Service after the war investigating corruption. He was killed when I was 17. They said it was a robbery, but I knew better. He'd been investigating a senator who was embezzling funds meant for Indian reservations." Isabel. "No, let me finish. I became a governess because it was respectable work, but also because it put me in the houses of powerful men. I've been gathering information for years, sending it to my father's old partner in Washington. The Calhouns weren't random. I sought that position because of the rumors." Caleb stared at her. "You're a spy. An amateur one. But yes. And if we succeed tomorrow, if we get that portfolio, it needs to go to Washington. There are people there who can use it who've been building cases against this network for years. Why didn't you tell me before? Would you have believed me, a governess claiming to be an undercover agent?" She smiled weakly. "Besides, it doesn't change anything. The children still need saving. It changes everything. You're not just some innocent caught up in this. You chose it." "Does that make me less worthy of help?" Caleb considered this. "No. If anything, it makes you braver than I thought. And I already thought you were the bravest woman I'd met since—" He stopped, unable to finish. "Since your wife, Sarah would have liked you. She had the same fire, the same refusal to accept injustice." Isabel reached out, taking his hand. Her fingers were cold, too cold. "Then let's honor her memory by saving these children." That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He stood watch on the porch rifle across his knees, watching the stars wheel overhead. Tom Bradley joined him after midnight, unable to sleep either. "You think my sister's still alive?" the young man asked. "I don't know, Tom. I hope so." "If she is, if she's in one of those places Garrett mentioned, what will she be like? Will she still be Lily?" Caleb thought of all the broken people he'd seen in his years of hunting men, the victims left in violence's wake. She'll be changed, hurt, but the core of who she is that's harder to kill than you might think. If you find her, she'll need patience, understanding, time to heal. I can give her that. I know you can. Dr. Chen emerged from the house, checking her medical bag one more time. I've given her as much laudanum as I dare. She'll be functional tomorrow, but the pain will be significant. She's stubborn enough to work through it. Stubborn's one word for it. I might choose foolish or heroic. Sometimes they're the same thing. She looked at him shrewdly. You care for her. I've known her 2 days. Sometimes 2 days is enough. Sometimes 2 minutes is. Dr. Chen closed her bag with a snap. My husband was Chinese. Did you know that came here to build railroads, stayed to open an herb shop? I was a proper Eastern lady, fresh from medical school, come west to bring civilization to the frontier. I took one look at him and knew my life had changed forever. What happened to him? Vigilantes. Decided there were too many Chinese in town, started burning businesses. He tried to protect his shop. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were distant. I couldn't save him. All my medical training, and I couldn't save the one person who mattered most. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. If you care for that woman in there, keep her alive. The dead don't thank you for joining them. Dawn came too soon, painting the mountains pink and gold. Isabel was up dressed in men's clothing that hung loose on her frame, her face set with determination despite the pain evident in every movement. You don't have to do this, Caleb told her one more time. Yes, I do. Those children have been waiting for someone to save them for God knows how long. I won't make them wait another day. They set out just after noon, a grim procession heading towards Santa Fe. Sam and his men split off toward the warehouse district. Chen took her medical buggy, looking every inch the respectable doctor on a house call. Isabel and Tom waited with the wagon in an alley near the Calhoun mansion. Caleb approached from the main street, walking openly, making no attempt to hide. He wanted them to see him coming, wanted them nervous and focused on him. The Calhoun mansion sat like a Spanish castle in the middle of manicured grounds, all white walls and red tile roofs. Guards were visible at the gate and walking the perimeter. Caleb counted 6, probably more inside. He stopped at the gate, hands visible but near his guns. Tell Calhoun that Caleb Mercer wants to talk. Tell him it's about Jake Garrett. The guard's eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in suspicion. Wait here. 5 minutes later, the gate opened. Caleb was escorted at gunpoint to the front door where Maxwell Calhoun himself waited. Calhoun was everything Caleb had expected. Tall, silver-haired, immaculately dressed, even in the afternoon heat. His eyes were pale blue, cold as winter sky, and his smile was that of a man who'd never lost a negotiation. "Mr. Mercer, I've heard so much about you. Please come in. We have much to discuss." The study was opulent, all leather and mahogany, and books that had probably never been read. Caleb's eyes found the portrait of Mrs. Calhoun immediately behind it would be the safe Garrett had mentioned. 2 guards stood by the door, hands on their weapons. "Whiskey," Calhoun offered, pouring himself a generous measure. "I'll pass." "Straight to business, then. You mentioned Jake Garrett. I assume you have him." "I do. He's alive. Wounded, but alive." "And you want what?" "Money for his return. Information. I want to know about Isabel Hartwell." Calhoun's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "My former governess. She murdered 3 of my men and kidnapped my children. Surely you're not harboring a fugitive, Mr. Mercer." "Your children?" 3 orphans my wife and I took in out of Christian charity. Miss Hartwell seemed to think she could ransom them back to us. Delusional woman. "That's not what Garrett says." Now Calhoun's mask slipped just for a second. "Jake is wounded, probably delirious. His words can't be trusted." "Maybe not, but the portfolio in your safe might be more reliable." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Calhoun set down his whiskey glass very carefully. "You're treading on dangerous ground, Mr. Mercer." "I've been there before." "Yes, I suppose you have. The famous bounty hunter turned peaceful rancher, suddenly back in the game. What prompted this change? Surely not just a woman's pretty face. Sometimes a man sees something that reminds him who he used to be, or who he should have been all along." Calhoun laughed, a sound like ice breaking. "How poetic and how pointless. Do you really think you can walk into my house, make threats, and walk out alive? I think you're a businessman, and I think you're curious about what I know and who else knows it. Perhaps, or perhaps I'll just have my men shoot you now and dump your body in the desert." A commotion from somewhere in the house raised voices, a door slamming. Calhoun frowned, gesturing to one of the guards. "Go see what that is." The guard left. Caleb counted seconds in his head. Dr. Chen should be with the children by now. The chloroform would take effect quickly if she'd managed to use it. "You seem nervous, Mr. Calhoun." "Cautious. There's a difference." More noise from the back of the house. Then from outside, the sound of galloping horses approaching fast. "Mr. Calhoun!" A man burst into the study, dusty and panicked. "The warehouse is under attack. Someone's trying to steal the weapons." Calhoun's face went red. "How many men?" "At least a dozen, sir. They've already breached the outer fence." "Send everyone. Now." "But, sir, the house—" "Go!" The remaining guard looked uncertain. "Mr. Calhoun, should I stay?" "Yes, watch him." Calhoun grabbed a rifle from a cabinet. "If he moves, kill him." Calhoun strode out shouting orders. Through the window, Caleb could see men running for horses heading toward the warehouse district. Sam's distraction was working perfectly. The guard watched Caleb nervously, gun drawn, but not quite pointing at him. He was young, maybe 22, clearly not one of the hardened killers. "You know what your boss does here?" Caleb asked conversationally. "Shut up. Those orphans he mentioned, they're not orphans. They're kidnapped children sold to brothels in Mexico." I said, shut up. Your boss is a child slaver. That what you signed up for? The young man's gun wavered. Before he could respond, there was a crash from the hallway. Dr. Chen appeared supporting a drowsy-looking young boy. Oh, she feigned surprise at seeing them. I'm sorry, I was looking for the back door. Mrs. Calhoun asked me to take the children for some air. They're feeling poorly. The guard turned toward her, confused. It was all the opening Caleb needed. He moved fast, grabbing the gun and twisting it away, then dropping the guard with a precise blow to the temple. Where are the others? He asked Dr. Chen. In the kitchen. The chloroform worked on the staff, but I had to be careful with the dosage for the children. They're groggy but mobile. They moved quickly through the house. In the kitchen, they found Isabel with two other children, a girl who must be Mary and an older girl, Rebecca. Tom Bradley was carrying bags of supplies. We need to go, Isabel said. Now. But Caleb was already moving toward the study. Get them to the wagon. I'll catch up. Caleb, no, we have what we came for. Not everything. He ran back to the study to the portrait of Mrs. Calhoun. The safe was there, just as Garrett had said, 61578. The combination worked, the heavy door swinging open. Inside was the portfolio thick with documents. But there was also gold stacks of bills and something else, a small photograph of a young girl maybe 4 years old with distinctive red hair. He grabbed everything, stuffing it into a leather satchel he found in the desk. Then on impulse, he struck a match from the box on Calhoun's desk and dropped it onto the papers remaining in the safe. The fire caught quickly, spreading to the portrait, the curtains. By the time he reached the wagon, the study windows were glowing orange. Isabel had the children settled in the back, covered with blankets. Dr. Chen was already in her buggy, heading in a different direction to avoid suspicion. The mission, Caleb said to Tom, who held the reins. Fast as you can. They raced through the streets of Santa Fe, the wagon bouncing dangerously on the rutted roads. Behind them, smoke rose from the Calhoun mansion. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. But as they turned onto the mission road, Caleb saw riders ahead. Not Sam's men. These wore badges. Sheriff's men, Tom said. They're blocking the road. Turn around, Isabel said. But there were more riders coming from behind. They were trapped. The sheriff himself rode forward, a heavy man with a badge that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Caleb recognized him. Bill Morrison, as corrupt as they came, but smart enough to survive in the game. Well, well. Caleb Mercer, Isabel Hartwell. And what do we have here? The Calhoun children. Morrison's smile was unpleasant. Kidnapping's a hanging offense. These children were kidnapped by Calhoun, not us, Isabel said. We have proof. Do you now? Well, you can present that proof at your trial, if you live that long. The sheriff's men raised their weapons. Caleb counted 12, all positioned well. No cover, no way out. He'd failed. They'd come so close only to fall at the last fence. But then Mary, the youngest child, stood up in the wagon bed, her small voice carrying clearly. You're the bad man, she said to Morrison. You came to the house. You and Mr. Calhoun picked which of us would go on the boat. You said I was worth extra because of my blue eyes. Morrison's face went pale. Shut that brat up. You touched Rebecca in the bad way. Mary continued, her child's voice devastating in its innocence. She cried and cried after you left. I said, shut her up. But Rebecca was standing now, 2 tears streaming down her face. It's true. All of it's true. They hurt us, sold us. These people saved us. One of Morrison's deputies lowered his gun, looking sick. Sheriff, what's she talking about? Nothing, they're lying. Children don't lie about things like that, another deputy said. Not with that kind of detail. James the boy found his voice. My real name is James Donovan. My parents are shopkeepers in Amarillo. The bad men took me when I was walking home from school. Please, I just want to go home. The deputies were wavering now, looking at each other, at the children, at their sheriff with new eyes. These children are evidence in a federal investigation, a new voice said. Everyone turned. Dr. Chen's buggy had returned, but she wasn't alone. With her was a man in a black suit holding credentials. Agent Robert Stanton, United States Secret Service. I'll be taking custody of these children and these people. Morrison's hand went to his gun. This is my jurisdiction. Not anymore. Stanton produced a telegram. Federal warrant for the arrest of Maxwell Calhoun Judge Montgomery and Sheriff William Morrison on charges of kidnapping, human trafficking, and corruption. You're under arrest, Sheriff. You can't. This is a how did you... Miss Hartwell has been working with us for months, Stanton said. Everything she's witnessed documented. Your little empire is over. But Morrison wasn't going down without a fight. He drew his gun, aiming at Isabel. If I'm going to hang, might as well take the bitch who... Caleb's gun was in his hand before Conscious thought the Colt speaking once. Morrison toppled from his saddle, his shot going wild. The deputies raised their weapons, but Stanton's voice cracked like a whip. Stand down. Any man who fires will be charged with attempted murder of a federal agent. The moment stretched taut, then broke. The deputies lowered their guns. One of them, the one who'd first questioned Morrison, actually looked relieved. We didn't know, he said to Stanton. About the children. We didn't know. That will be for a court to decide. For now, you're all under arrest. Drop your weapons. As the deputies complied, Caleb turned to Isabel. Federal investigation. She smiled weakly. I told you I'd been sending information to Washington. Agent Stanton is my father's old partner. He's been building this case for years, but we needed proof. The portfolio will give him that. You could have told me he was coming. I didn't know he was. The plan was to get the evidence to the territorial governor. She looked at Stanton. How did you know? Dr. Chen sent me a telegram yesterday, said you'd surfaced and were making your move. I was already in Albuquerque investigating another piece of this network. Rode all night to get here. Caleb handed over the satchel with the portfolio. As Stanton opened it, examining the contents, his face went grim. This is more extensive than we thought. There are names here going all the way to Washington. He looked at the photograph of the red-haired girl. Who's this? Tom Bradley's sister, I think, Caleb said. Tom Schiss. Tom took the photograph with shaking hands. Lily. Oh God, it's Lily! He looked at Stanton desperately. She's alive. Where is she? Stanton examined the documents. According to this, she was sold to a household in Mexico City 14 months ago, as a domestic servant. His jaw tightened. We'll find her son. We'll find all of them. The sound of more horses approaching made everyone tense, but it was Sam Weathers and his men, dusty and triumphant. Warehouse is secure, Sam reported. Local army units showed up, took possession of the weapons. Seems someone tipped them off about stolen military supplies. He winked at Stanton. Funny how that happens. What about Calhoun? Caleb asked. On his way back to a burning house and federal marshals waiting for him. He's finished. Mary tugged on Isabel's sleeve. Miss Isabel, can we really go home? Isabel knelt despite the obvious pain it caused her and embraced the child. Yes, sweetheart. You're going home. The federal marshals arrived within the hour, a dozen men who moved with the efficiency of those who'd done this before. Agent Stanton supervised the arrest of the remaining deputies, though several were released after questioning revealed they genuinely knew nothing of Morrison's involvement with the trafficking ring. The children were taken to Dr. Chen's clinic for examination with 2 marshals standing guard. Caleb found himself standing in the mission courtyard as the sun began its descent, watching the organized chaos unfold around him. His ribs ached where the bullet had grazed him days ago, and exhaustion weighed on him like a physical thing. But they'd done it. They'd actually saved those children. You should have that looked at, Isabel said, approaching slowly. She moved carefully, one hand pressed to her side, but her color was better than it had been. You should be resting. Dr. Chen gave me something for the pain, said I was too stubborn to stay in bed anyway. Might as well make myself useful. She stood beside him watching as Agent Stanton questioned Garrett, who'd been brought from the ranch in chains. Strange how quickly everything changes. This morning we were outlaws. Now we're heroes. Heroes don't usually have my kind of past. Maybe that's exactly what makes you one. You chose to change to be better. That's harder than never falling in the first place. Before Caleb could respond, Tom Bradley approached the photograph of his sister clutched in his hand. His face was a mixture of hope and anguish. Agent Stanton says he'll send men to Mexico City immediately, Tom said. Says with the documentation from the portfolio the Mexican authorities will cooperate. But it could take weeks, maybe months. She survived this long, Isabel said gently. She'll survive a little longer. But what if she doesn't want to come back? What if she's changed? Caleb gripped the young man's shoulder. Then you love her anyway. You give her time space to heal. You remind her every day that she's safe, that she's valued. That's all any of us can do for those who've been broken. Tom nodded, wiping his eyes. I'm going with the agents to Mexico. Stanton says he can arrange it. I need to be there when they find her. Good man! As Tom walked away, Dr. Chen emerged from her clinic, blood on her apron, but satisfaction on her face. The children are physically healthy, considering, she reported. Malnourished, some old bruises, but nothing that won't heal with time and care. It's the invisible wounds I worry about. Stanton says there are people in Washington, doctors, who specialize in helping children who've been through trauma, Isabel said. They'll get the best care possible. And then what their families may not want them back, not after this. Society isn't kind to victims, especially not these kinds of victims. Then we change society, Isabel said with the fierce determination Caleb had come to expect from her. One mind at a time if we have to. Agent Stanton approached, his face grim despite their success. We have a problem. Judge Montgomery's disappeared. His house is empty. His office cleared out. Someone warned him. He has contacts everywhere, Garrett said from where he sat shackled to a post. Probably knew the moment you arrived in town. Where would he go? Caleb asked. Mexico, most likely. He's got property there, connections. Once he crosses the border, he's untouchable. Stanton's jaw tightened. Not if I have anything to say about it. I'm sending riders to every border crossing. He won't get away. You don't know Montgomery, Garrett laughed bitterly. He's got contingency plans for his contingency plans. Probably has a dozen different escape routes mapped out. Then tell us which one he'll use, Isabel said, approaching Garrett with a cold intensity that made even the hardened killer lean back. You want to prove you're not completely irredeemable. Help us catch him. Garrett studied her for a long moment. There's an old Spanish mission, San Carlos, about 40 miles south of here, abandoned for decades. Montgomery uses it as a way station, sometimes placed to change horses and supplies. If he's running, he'll stop there tonight. Why should we believe you? Stanton asked. Because I want him caught as much as you do. He'll throw everyone else under the wagon to save himself, including me. My only chance at avoiding the noose is to cooperate fully. Stanton considered this, then nodded. I'll send men immediately. No, Caleb said. Send me. Everyone turned to look at him. Caleb, you're exhausted, Isabel protested. You've done enough. Montgomery's the head of the snake. Cut that off and the whole organization dies. Besides, your federal marshals are good, but they don't know this territory like I do. They don't know how men like Montgomery think. I can't officially sanction, Stanton began. Then don't. I'm just a private citizen riding south on personal business. If I happen to encounter a fugitive, Sam Weathers stepped forward. He won't be riding alone. My men and I have a stake in this too. Count me in, Jose added. My nephew disappeared 2 years ago. Maybe Montgomery knows where he ended up. Stanton looked between them, then sighed. I can't stop private citizens from traveling where they wish. But if you happen to encounter Judge Montgomery, it would be helpful if he was brought back alive to stand trial. We'll do our best, Caleb said, though his tone suggested best was a flexible concept. Isabel grabbed his arm as he turned to go. You're not leaving without me. You can barely ride. You've lost too much blood. You're running on nothing but willpower and laudanum. I've come this far. I'm seeing it through to the end. Isabel. I'm going, Caleb, with or without you, so you might as well take me with you where you can keep an eye on me. He wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes told him it would be pointless. This was her fight as much as anyone's, maybe more. Fine, but you ride in the wagon with the supplies, no arguments. She nodded, though they both knew she'd be on horseback the moment she thought she could manage it. They set out as darkness fell, a party of 8, including Tom Bradley, who'd postponed his trip to Mexico to see this through. The night was clear and cold stars brilliant in the desert sky. They rode in silence, mostly each lost in their own thoughts. About midnight, they stopped to rest the horses at a small spring. Isabel had indeed moved from the wagon to horseback, though Caleb could see the effort it cost her in the tight lines around her mouth. Tell me about after, she said quietly, sitting beside him on a boulder while the horses drank. After this is over, what will you do? I don't know. The ranch is probably burned by now. Have to start over somewhere. You could come to Washington. Stanton says there's work for men like you investigating these trafficking rings. They're not just in New Mexico, they're everywhere. Is that what you're going to do, keep working for the Secret Service? Someone has to. These children, they deserve justice, and there are so many more out there waiting for rescue. She was quiet for a moment. My father would be proud, I think. This is what he died trying to do. He would be very proud. She leaned against him slightly, perhaps unconsciously, and he found himself accepting the weight, the warmth of her presence. It had been so long since he'd allowed anyone close since Sarah died. But Isabel had somehow slipped past his defenses, maybe because she had her own walls, her own grief. Riders coming, Jose announced suddenly, appearing from the darkness like a ghost. 4, maybe 5, moving fast from the south. Everyone reached for weapons, spreading out for cover. But the riders came openly, making no attempt at stealth. As they got closer, Caleb recognized the lead rider. It was one of Stanton's marshals. Marshal Fuller, the man introduced himself, dismounting. Agent Stanton sent us ahead to scout the mission. It's abandoned. If Montgomery was there, he's gone now. How long? Few hours at most. Fire pit was still warm. We found tracks heading southeast toward Skeleton Canyon. Skeleton Canyon, where the gun deal was supposed to happen, where Miguel Santana would be waiting with his men. He's not just running, Caleb said, understanding flooding through him. He's going to Santana. Probably plans to buy safe passage to Mexico with information about the gun shipment. Or warn him it's been compromised, Sam added. Either way, Santana won't be happy about the interruption to his business. How far to the canyon? Isabel asked. 3 hours hard riding, Jose answered. But the canyon's a maze, dozens of places to hide to ambush. If Montgomery gets there first and warns Santana we're coming, then we make sure he doesn't, Caleb said. Jose, you know a faster route? The tracker considered. There's an old Apache trail, rough, dangerous in the dark, but it would cut an hour off the journey. Then we take it. Marshal Fuller stepped forward. We're coming with you. Stanton's orders were to assist however possible. Caleb nodded. More guns would be helpful, especially if they were riding into a confrontation with Santana's men. The Apache Trail was everything Jose had warned, narrow, treacherous, winding through rough country that seemed determined to throw them from their saddles. Isabel rode without complaint, though Caleb could see her swaying occasionally, catching herself against the saddle horn. They reached the entrance to Skeleton Canyon just as the eastern sky began to lighten with pre-dawn gray. The canyon earned its name from the white limestone formations that looked like massive bones in the half-light. Jose dismounted, studying the ground. Many horses passed this way. Recently, maybe 20 men, possibly more. Santana's crew, Sam said. They're already here. And Montgomery. Single rider moving fast, he's maybe an hour ahead of us. They proceeded carefully into the canyon, weapons ready. The walls rose on either side, creating a natural killing ground. If Santana's men were watching, the group would be easy targets. But they encountered no one as they moved deeper into the maze of rock. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the sound of their horses' hooves on stone. Then they heard voices ahead echoing off the canyon walls. Caleb raised his hand, signaling a stop. He dismounted, moving forward on foot with Sam and Jose. In a natural amphitheater of stone, they found them. Miguel Santana sat on a camp chair like a king holding court, surrounded by at least 15 armed men. And there, standing before him like a supplicant, was Judge Montgomery. You have to understand, Montgomery was saying, his usual commanding voice now, wheedling and desperate. The entire operation has been compromised. Calhoun is arrested, the children recovered. If you stay here, federal agents will be on you within hours. Santana, a lean man with silver threading through his black beard, looked unimpressed. And you come to warn me out of the goodness of your heart. I come seeking passage to Mexico. I have money gold, and information. I know every detail of Calhoun's operation, his contacts, his routes. That information is valuable to a man in your position. Or dangerous. If you know so much, perhaps it's better you don't live to share it with others. Montgomery went pale. I've been nothing but helpful to your organization. I've made sure the law looked the other way, provided documentation. Yes, and now the law is looking very closely, aren't they? Because of your failure. Caleb had heard enough. He stepped into view, rifle ready. Actually, the failure was mine. Every gun in the amphitheater swung toward him. Santana's men were well trained, but Caleb had positioned himself carefully. Any shooting would likely hit their own men as well. Caleb Mercer, Santana said, showing no surprise. The bounty hunter turned rancher turned hero. You've been busy. Just doing what needs doing. Judge Montgomery there is a wanted man. I'm here to collect him. And if I refuse to let you, then things get complicated. Santana laughed. You're one man with a rifle facing 15. That's not complicated. That's suicide. He's not alone, Sam said, appearing on a ledge above rifle trained on Santana himself. One by one, the others revealed themselves, Jose, Tom, the marshals all in positions of advantage. You're still outnumbered, Santana observed, though his casual demeanor had shifted slightly. True, but the first shot fired you die. Your men might get us all, but you won't be around to enjoy the victory. You'd start a war over this corrupt judge. He's part of a ring that's been stealing and selling children, Mexican children too, from your villages. Your people, Santana. Something shifted in Santana's expression. You have proof of this. Isabel stepped into view, moving carefully but steadily. I have documents. Names, dates, villages where children were taken. Your government will be very interested to see them. Santana was quiet for a long moment, then stood. You know, my sister's daughter disappeared last year. 8 years old. Pretty little thing, smart. The authorities said she probably drowned in the river, but we never found a body. What was her name? Isabel asked softly. Luz? Luz Santana. Isabel pulled a paper from the portfolio she carried. Luz Santana, age 8. Taken from Juarez, September 15, 1892. Sold to a household in Mexico City for $500 American. The silence in the canyon was absolute. Santana's face had gone very still, very dangerous. She's alive. According to these records, yes. Agent Stanton is coordinating with Mexican authorities to recover all the children. Your niece will be found. Santana turned to look at Montgomery, and the judge actually stepped back from what he saw in those eyes. You sold my blood to be a slave. I didn't know she was... Calhoun handled that side of... Shut up. Santana's voice was soft, which somehow made it more terrifying. Just shut up. He gestured to his men, who lowered their weapons. Take him, he told Caleb. Take him and make sure he hangs, publicly, slowly. The guns, one of Santana's lieutenants said. What about the shipment? There are no guns, Santana said. We were never here. This meeting never happened. He looked at Caleb. You understand I was never here. I understand. Montgomery tried to run, but Tom Bradley was ready, tackling him to the ground. The judge struggled, cursing, threatening, but Tom just smiled grimly and tied his hands. That's for my sister, you son of a bitch. As the marshals took custody of Montgomery, Santana approached Isabel. These documents, they'll really help find the children. Every single one we can. I promise you that. He nodded, then did something unexpected. He took her hand and kissed it, an old-world gesture of respect. You're very brave, señorita, or very foolish. Well, both, I think. The best people usually are. He turned to Caleb. You've made an enemy today, but also perhaps a friend. If you ever need anything south of the border, send word. I'll remember that. Santana and his men melted away into the canyon like smoke, leaving the small group alone with their prisoner. Montgomery had gone silent, perhaps finally understanding that his power, his threats meant nothing now. We should get back, Marshal Fuller said. Agent Stanton will want to question him immediately. You go ahead, Caleb said. We'll follow shortly. The marshals left with Montgomery and Tom, eager to get the judge secured. Sam and his men decided to ride with them, ensuring no rescue attempt could succeed. Soon, only Caleb, Isabel, and Jose remained in the canyon. Why did you want to stay? Isabel asked. Caleb looked around the amphitheater of stone at the place where so much evil had been planned and executed. Wanted to make sure it was really over. Is it There are others like Calhoun and Montgomery out there, other children waiting for rescue. But not our fight. Not anymore. She turned to him, something vulnerable in her eyes. What is our fight now? Before he could answer, Jose spoke up. Riders approaching. Fast. They took cover quickly, weapons ready, but the rider who appeared was alone and Caleb recognized him. Agent Stanton riding hard. Thank God I found you, he said, dismounting. We have a problem. Calhoun escaped. What? How? Had help from inside. One of the marshals been on his payroll for years. They killed 2 guards, took horses. They're heading this way, probably trying to reach Mexico. How long ago? Maybe 2 hours. With fresh horses, they could be... A shot rang out, and Stanton spun, clutching his shoulder. More shots followed as Calhoun and 3 men emerged from cover, having circled around through another canyon entrance. Drop your weapons, Calhoun commanded. He looked wild, his perfect appearance disheveled, his cold eyes now burning with rage. Drop them, or the next shot goes through the woman's head. They had no choice. The guns went down. You destroyed everything, Calhoun snarled, focusing on Isabel. My home, my business, my life. All for what? Some meaningless brats who would have been better off in their new lives. Better off as slaves. Isabel's voice was steady despite the gun pointed at her. They would have had food shelter purpose. Now they'll go back to poverty, to being unwanted burdens on families that can't afford them. That's not your choice to make. Everything is my choice. I built an empire. I had judges, senators, governors in my pocket. And now you have nothing, Caleb said quietly. Calhoun's gun swung toward him. I still have my life, and my freedom, and the satisfaction of knowing you'll all be dead. Your mistake, Isabel said, was thinking we were the only ones who cared about those children. What? A rifle shot echoed through the canyon. Calhoun's gun flew from his hand as he cried out, clutching his wrist. His men spun, looking for the shooter, but more shots came from multiple directions. One man fell, then another. Miguel Santana stepped into view, smoking rifle in hand. I told you I was never here, but sometimes even ghosts take action. The last of Calhoun's men threw down his weapon, hands raised. Calhoun himself stood, frozen blood dripping from his shattered wrist, his face a mask of disbelief. You can't... This isn't... I have rights. So did those children, Santana said. He looked at Caleb. I'll leave him to your justice. But if he escapes again, he won't make it to Mexico. That's a promise. As Santana's men bound Calhoun, the man broke down, all his arrogance crumbling. It was just business, just supply and demand. I didn't create the market, I just filled it. Tell that to the families, Tom Bradley said, having returned with the marshals. Tell that to every parent who lost a child. Agent Stanton, despite his wound, managed to stand with Dr. Chen's help. She'd arrived with reinforcements, always seemingly one step ahead of where she was needed. Maxwell Calhoun, you're under arrest for kidnapping, human trafficking, murder, and conspiracy. You'll be held in federal custody until trial. A trial? Calhoun laughed bitterly. You think that matters? You think stopping me changes anything? There are dozens more like me. Hundreds. This trade has existed for centuries and will exist for centuries more. Maybe, Isabel said, but not here, not now, and not with these children. As the marshals led Calhoun away, Caleb found himself standing with Isabel at the canyon's edge, watching the sun rise fully over the desert. The light painted everything gold and red, beautiful and harsh at once. So what now? He asked. Now we heal. The children ourselves. We find all the ones who were sold and bring them home. We make sure the trials happen, that justice is served. And after that, she turned to him, and for the first time since he'd found her in the desert, she smiled fully. After that we live. We find some way to be more than the sum of our scars. Together. I'd like that, if you would. He thought of Sarah, of the life he'd built and lost, of the 7 years he'd spent hiding from the world. Then he looked at Isabel, brave, broken, but undefeated, and saw a future he hadn't dared imagine. I'd like that too. Jose cleared his throat. Not to interrupt, but we should go. The children will be wondering what happened. As they rode back toward Santa Fe, Caleb felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. The world was still full of evil, still dangerous and cruel. But it was also full of people willing to fight against that evil, to stand up for those who couldn't stand for themselves. At Dr. Chen's clinic, they found organized chaos. The 3 rescued children were being reunited with their families. James's parents had arrived from Amarillo, sobbing as they held their son. Rebecca's aunt had come from Denver. And merry little Mary, who'd been so brave in confronting the sheriff, was wrapped in the arms of a young Mexican couple who'd never stopped searching for their daughter, whose real name was Maria. "Look at that," Dr. Chen said softly. "That's why we do this. For moments like this." Agent Stanton, his arm in a sling, but mobile, approached them. "The territorial governor wants to thank you personally. There's talk of a medal ceremony." "No," Caleb said firmly. "No ceremonies. This isn't about glory." "Then what is it about?" Caleb looked at Isabel, who was kneeling beside Maria, helping the girl show her parents a doll she'd kept hidden during her captivity. "Redemption, maybe. Second chances. The possibility that we can be better than we were." Over the next days, more children were found and returned. Tom Bradley left for Mexico with a team of agents determined to find his sister. The trials began with Calhoun and Montgomery facing federal charges that would likely see them hang. The network they'd built began to crumble as co-conspirators turned on each other trying to save themselves. But for Caleb and Isabel, the most important moment came a week later, standing in the ruins of Caleb's ranch. The house was indeed burned, but the land remained. "We could rebuild," Isabel said, her hand in his, "make something new from the ashes. A ranch, a home. Maybe a school for children who've been through trauma." Dr. Chen says there's funding available from Washington people who want to help. Caleb considered this, imagining the desert blooming with new life, with children's voices, with hope. Sarah would have loved that idea. "Then we'll do it. For her, for them, for us." As they stood there planning a future, neither had expected a rider approached. It was Sam Weathers, grinning broadly. "Thought you'd want to know. Tom found his sister. She's alive, damaged, but alive. They're bringing her home." Isabel sagged against Caleb in relief. "Thank God." "Also brought you something," Sam said, handing over a telegram. "From Santana." The message was brief. "Luce is home. The debt is paid. You are under my protection always. MS." "Looks like you've made an interesting friend," Sam observed. "The best people are complicated," Isabel said, echoing Santana's words. As Sam rode away, Caleb and Isabel stood together, looking at the land that would become their future. The sun was setting again, painting the desert in those eternal shades of gold and red. But now, instead of an ending, it felt like a beginning. "Are you ready for this?" Caleb asked. "Building something from nothing. It won't be easy." "Nothing worth doing ever is," Isabel replied. "But we've faced worse odds." He kissed her then there in the ruins of his old life, sealing a promise for the new one they'd build together. Around them, the desert stretched endless and unforgiving, but also full of possibility. They'd walked through hell and emerged scarred, but not broken, wounded, but not defeated. The children they'd saved would carry their own scars, would face their own battles with memory and trauma. But they'd also carry the knowledge that someone had fought for them, that they were worth saving. And perhaps in time they'd learn what Caleb and Isabel were only beginning to understand. That redemption wasn't a destination, but a journey. One that required courage, faith, and the willingness to keep walking even when the path seemed impossible. As darkness fell over New Mexico, they made camp in what had been the kitchen building, a fire in the old hearth that had somehow survived the flames. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, contractors to hire plans to make a future to build. But tonight, they had each other and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. "Tell me about Sarah," Isabel said as they sat by the fire. "Tell me about the life you built here before." So Caleb did, sharing memories he'd kept locked away for 7 years. He told her about Sarah's laugh, about the garden she'd tried to grow in the desert soil, about Sunday dinners and quiet evenings, and all the small moments that make a life. And Isabel listened, understanding that these stories weren't competition, but foundation that the past could inform the future without imprisoning it. "She sounds wonderful," Isabel said when he finished. She was, and she would have liked you very much. Because I'm also stubborn and reckless. Because you fight for what's right no matter the cost. She was like that too. They talked through the night, sharing stories and plans, dreams and fears. And when dawn came again, bringing with it all its harsh beauty and promise, they were ready to face it together. The work of rebuilding began immediately. Word spread about their plans for a school, and help came from unexpected quarters. Former outlaws Sam had known donated money they'd hidden away. Dr. Chen organized medical support from colleagues back east. Even some of Santa Fe's wealthy families, eager to distance themselves from the Calhoun scandal, contributed funds. But the most surprising help came from the children themselves. James Donovan's parents, grateful beyond words, sold their shop in Amarillo and moved to the ranch, bringing their skills in teaching and accounting. Rebecca's aunt, a widow with nursing experience, came to help run the dormitories they planned. And Maria's parents, skilled in construction and cooking, became the backbone of the daily operations. "It's becoming a community," Isabel observed one evening, standing on the new porch they'd built, watching children play in the courtyard. They'd taken in 6 more rescued children who had nowhere else to go, and the sound of their laughter was better than any music. "It's becoming what it was meant to be," Caleb corrected. "What Sarah always dreamed of, a place where broken things could be made whole." The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning 3 months after they'd begun construction on the school. Isabel was teaching the younger children their letters, while Caleb worked with Jose and the older boys on building a new stable. The writer who delivered it was dusty and exhausted, having ridden hard from Santa Fe. "Urgent from Agent Stanton," he said, handing over the sealed envelope. "He said you'd want to read it immediately." Isabel opened it with trembling fingers, Caleb reading over her shoulder. The words seemed to blur before their eyes, then snap into terrible focus. "Montgomery escaped during transport to federal prison," she read aloud. "3 marshals dead, believed to be heading back to New Mexico. Exercise extreme caution." The paper slipped from her fingers, drifting to the ground like a dead leaf. Around them, the sounds of construction and children's voices continued, unaware that their fragile peace had just shattered. "How?" Caleb's voice was granite. "He was in chains under heavy guard." The writer shifted uncomfortably. "From what I heard, sir, he had help. Professional killers may be hired by what's left of the trafficking ring. They hit the prison wagon in Arizona territory, middle of nowhere. 4 days ago. Agent Stanton's been trying to track him, but the trail's gone cold." 4 days. Montgomery could be anywhere by now. Or he could be very close, planning his revenge on those who'd destroyed his empire. "Double the watch, Ed," Caleb told Jose, who'd approached at the commotion. "Nobody rides alone anymore. And get word to Sam Weathers we might need his guns again." But even as he gave orders, Caleb felt a cold certainty settling in his chest. Montgomery wouldn't just run. The man's pride, his need for control, wouldn't allow it. He'd come for them, for Isabel especially. She'd been the one to expose him, to stand witness against him. That night, after the children were asleep, they held a war council in the main house. Dr. Chen had come from town along with Sam and his men. Tom Bradley was there too, his sister Lily beside him. They'd returned from Mexico the week before, and while Lily was still fragile, still healing, she'd insisted on being part of the discussion. "He'll have hired the best," Sam said, cleaning his rifle with practiced motions. "Montgomery's got money hidden away, connections we didn't know about. He could have a small army." "Then we evacuate," Dr. Chen suggested. "Get the children somewhere safe until he's caught." "Where?" Isabel asked. "Where would be safe from a man with his resources, and for how long we can't run forever?" "She's right," Lily Bradley said softly. It was the first time she'd spoken in the meeting, and everyone turned to look at her. At 17, she looked older, marked by her experiences, but not broken by them. "Running just makes you pray. I learned that the hard way." Tom reached for his sister's hand, but she continued. "Montgomery's like the men who took me. They feed on fear, on having power over others. You run, he wins. You hide, he wins. The only way to beat him is to face him." "You're talking about using ourselves as bait," Caleb said. "I'm talking about ending this properly. Otherwise, you'll spend your whole lives looking over your shoulders, wondering when he'll come." The room was quiet for a moment, everyone considering her words. She was right, and they all knew it. Montgomery wouldn't stop until he had his revenge or was dead. There was no middle ground. "All right," Caleb said finally. "We make ready for a siege. But first we get word out carefully about where we are. Make sure Montgomery hears it. When he comes, we'll be ready." Over the next days, they transformed the ranch into a fortress. The children were moved to the most defensible building with escape routes planned and practiced. Every adult was armed, watches were set, and supplies were laid in for a prolonged fight. But it was the children themselves who provided an unexpected advantage. Little Maria, who'd been Mary in the Calhoun house, had developed a habit of watching everything and everyone. She came to Isabel one evening tugging on her skirt. "Miss Isabel, there's a man watching us. From the big rocks to the west. He's been there since yesterday." Isabel knelt down, keeping her voice calm. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" "Yes. He has a telescope thing, like Mr. Caleb uses to look at stars, but he's looking at us." Within an hour, Jose had confirmed it. A single observer, well hidden, watching the ranch. They'd found Montgomery's scout. "Do we take him?" Sam asked. "No," Caleb decided. "Let him watch. Let him report back that we're here, that we're vulnerable. But Jose find his camp. See if he's alone." Jose returned near midnight with disturbing news. "Not alone. There are 8 men camped in Skeleton Canyon, well-armed professional. They're waiting for something." "Or someone," Isabel said. "Montgomery. He's coming here personally." "Then we need to act first," Caleb said. "Hit them before they're ready." But Isabel was shaking her head. "No, that's what he expects for you to be the hunter you used to be. We need to be smarter." "What do you have in mind?" She looked around the room at their assembled allies, then at the door beyond which the children slept. "We use his arrogance against him, his need to gloat to see us broken before he kills us. We give him what he wants, seemingly." The plan she outlined was dangerous, required precise timing, and depended on Montgomery's ego overcoming his caution, but it was also brilliant in its simplicity. 3 nights later, they put it into motion. Isabel rode out alone just after sunset, heading toward town on the main road. To anyone watching, and they knew someone was, she looked vulnerable, isolated, perfect prey. Caleb followed at a distance, staying to the shadows, every instinct screaming at him to ride closer to protect her. The attack came at Devil's Bend, where the road curved between high rocks. 4 men materialized from the darkness surrounding Isabel's horse. She played her part perfectly, crying out in fear, trying to wheel her mount around but finding no escape. "Miss Hartwell, beat," one of the men said, his voice cultured Eastern, not typical hired muscle. "Judge Montgomery would like a word with you." "Please." Isabel gasped, her terror only half feigned. "Please, I have children depending on me." "Yes, the judge mentioned your little school. Don't worry, he has plans for them too." They bound her hands not gently and led her off the road. Caleb followed, joined now by Sam and 2 of his men. They'd expected Isabel to be taken counted on it, but that didn't make watching it easier. The kidnappers led Isabel to an abandoned homestead about 2 miles from the main road. Montgomery was waiting inside, dressed as impeccably as ever, despite being a fugitive. The months since his arrest hadn't been kind to him. His face was gaunter. His eyes burned with a fanatic's intensity. "Miss Hartwell, he said, rising from a chair by the fireplace. "Or should I say Agent Hartwell? Yes, I know about your connection to the Secret Service now. You played your part well." "Not well enough, apparently," Isabel replied, her chin raised despite her bound hands. "You're here, aren't you?" Montgomery backhanded her casually, sending her stumbling. "Still defiant. We'll see how long that lasts." He gestured to his men. "Bring her to the table." They forced her into a chair, and Montgomery produced a leather case from his coat. Inside were surgical instruments gleaming in the lamplight. "I had weeks to think in that cell," he said conversationally, selecting a thin blade. "Weeks to plan what I would do to you. You cost me everything, my position, my wealth, my reputation. It seems only fair that you should lose everything too. You cost yourself those things when you chose to traffic children." "Children," Montgomery scoffed. "Always back to the children. You act like they were precious treasures instead of the refuse they were. Orphans, Indians, Mexicans, the dregs of society. Every child is precious. Sentiment, weakness. He touched the blade to her cheek, not cutting yet, just letting her feel the cold metal. I'm going to start with your face. That pretty face that convinced Caleb Mercer to help you. Then your hands, you won't be teaching any more lessons. And then when you're begging for death, I'll tell you what I have planned for your little school. You're insane. No, my dear, I'm methodical. There's a difference. Outside, Caleb watched through a crack in the wall, every muscle tense to act, but not yet. The signal hadn't come. They needed Montgomery to reveal everything to implicate himself fully. You know, Montgomery continued, I could have just had you killed, shot from a distance quick and clean, but that wouldn't have been satisfying. I needed you to know you'd failed, that those children you saved will end up right back where they started. You're lying. I still have contacts, Miss Hartwell. Still have people who owe me favors. Your little ranch is quite isolated. Accidents happen. Fires start. Children disappear. He leaned closer. Within a month of your death, that school will be ashes, and every child there will be scattered to the winds. Some might even end up in familiar hands. Isabel's eyes flashed with genuine rage now. You won't touch them. I won't have to. My associates will handle everything. It's already arranged, you see. Whether I survive tonight or not, those children are doomed. Unless what? Montgomery smiled, the expression reptilian. Unless you cooperate. Sign a confession that you fabricated the evidence against me and Calhoun, that you were the real trafficker using your position to identify vulnerable children. Clear my name, and I might be persuaded to call off my dogs. Go to hell. Eventually, but you'll arrive there first. He raised the blade, and Isabel did something he didn't expect. She laughed. What's so amusing? You. You're so convinced of your own superiority, your own intelligence, that you can't see the trap, even as it closes around you. Montgomery's eyes narrowed. What trap? The one where you just confessed everything to a federal witness while surrounded by federal agents. The door exploded inward. Agent Stanton entered, weapon drawn, followed by 4 marshals. At the same moment, Caleb and Sam burst through the windows. Montgomery's men reached for their guns but found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Judge Elias Montgomery, Stanton said with deep satisfaction, you're under arrest again, and this time you'll hang for certain. Montgomery stood frozen, the blade still in his hand, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally a terrible understanding. You planned this, he said to Isabel. We all did, she replied, standing and easily slipping out of the ropes they'd been partially cut beforehand, loose enough for her to escape when needed. You see, Judge, we knew you'd come for me. Your pride wouldn't allow anything else. So we made it easy for you. The watcher at the ranch, one of Stanton's men, fed you exactly what we wanted you to know. The vulnerability, the isolation. All performance. Like you said, I played my part well. Montgomery's face contorted with rage, and he lunged at her with the blade. But Caleb was already moving his fist, connecting with Montgomery's jaw, sending the judge crashing to the floor. The blade skittered away across the boards. That's for touching her, Caleb said quietly. And this, his boot connected with Montgomery's ribs, is for threatening the children. Enough, Stanton said, though without much conviction. We need him alive for trial. They dragged Montgomery to his feet, blood running from his nose. His perfect composure was finally completely shattered. You haven't won, he snarled. I have associates, allies. They'll come for you. Your associates are being arrested as we speak, Stanton informed him. That list you so helpfully provided during your villain's monologue, we've been tracking them for weeks. Your entire network is finished. As the marshals dragged Montgomery away, he locked eyes with Isabel one last time. You'll never be safe. Never. Someone will always be hunting you. Maybe, Isabel replied, but not you. Not anymore. After Montgomery and his men were secured for transport this time with triple guards and chains that would require a blacksmith to remove the group gathered back at the ranch, the children were safe, unaware of how close danger had come. It's really over, Tom Bradley said, though it sounded more like a question than a statement. This part is, Stanton confirmed. Montgomery will hang within the month. Calhoun, too. Their network is destroyed, at least in this territory. But there are others, Isabel said quietly. Other networks, other stolen children. There are, Stanton agreed. which is why I'm here with an offer. The service wants to create a special division focused on crimes against children. Trafficking, exploitation, abuse. We need people who understand the problem, who have the skills and the stomach for the work. He looked between Isabel and Caleb. We need you both. I'm no federal agent, Caleb said. You could be. Your tracking skills, your experience with criminals, invaluable. And Miss Hartwell, you've already proven yourself. This would just make it official. Isabel looked at Caleb, then at the buildings they'd worked so hard to construct. What about the school? It stays, Stanton said. Becomes a model for others. The Bradley family and Dr. Chen can run it day to day. You'd be based here but available for investigations throughout the territory. Maybe beyond. Caleb thought of the quiet life he'd tried to build, the peace he'd sought after Sarah's death. It was tempting to say no, to focus just on the school, on the children they'd already saved. But then he looked at Isabel, saw the fire in her eyes at the thought of saving more children, and knew the decision was already made. We'll do it, he said. Together. Stanton smiled. I hoped you'd say that. There's already a case in Colorado, children disappearing from mining camps. When you're ready, give us a week, Isabel said, to make arrangements here to make sure everything's stable. That night, as they stood on the porch watching stars emerge in the desert sky, Isabel leaned into Caleb's embrace. Are you sure about this? She asked. It means giving up any chance of a normal, quiet life. I had a quiet life for 7 years. It was a kind of death, slow and numbing. This, what we're building, what we're doing, it's life. Dangerous, uncertain, but life. Sarah would be proud of you. She would be proud of us. A small hand tugged at Isabel's skirt. Maria stood there in her nightgown, rubbing sleepy eyes. Miss Isabel, I had a bad dream. Isabel scooped her up, holding her close. It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe. The bad men were coming back. They're not. The bad men are gone, locked away, where they can never hurt anyone again. Promise? I promise. As Maria settled against Isabel's shoulder, already drifting back to sleep, Caleb felt something shift in his chest. This was family, unconventional and scarred, but family nonetheless. Worth protecting, worth fighting for. Dr. Chen emerged from the main house, medical bag in hand. Lily Bradley's having nightmares again. I'm going to sit with her a while. Is there anything we can do? Isabel asked. Time, the doctor said simply. Time and patience and the knowledge that someone cares. It's the only medicine for some wounds. Over the next days, they prepared for their new roles. James Donovan's parents officially took over the school's administration. Sam Weathers and his men agreed to provide security when needed. Jose would continue training the older boys in tracking and survival skills. The morning they were to leave for Colorado, the entire population of the ranch gathered to see them off. The children had made a banner that read, Our Heroes, painted in uneven letters that somehow made it more perfect. You'll come back, Maria asked, clinging to Isabel's hand. Always. This is our home. Tom Bradley stepped forward, his sister beside him. Mr. Mercer, Miss Hartwell, Isabel, we owe you everything. You owe us nothing, Caleb said firmly. You've paid any debt by helping us build this place. Lily Bradley did something unexpected. Then she hugged Isabel fiercely, whispering something in her ear that made Isabel's eyes shine with tears. What did she say? Caleb asked as they rode away, the ranch diminishing behind them. She said I gave her hope that broken things could be beautiful again. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the familiar desert giving way to different terrain as they headed north. The case files Stanton had provided made for grim reading, 6 children missing over 2 months, all from the same mining camp. The local law claimed they were runaways, but the pattern was too similar to what they'd seen before. Different place, same evil, Isabel observed. But now they have us to stop them. She smiled at him, fierce and beautiful. Yes, they do. As they made camp that first night, Caleb found himself thinking about cycles, about patterns. He'd been a hunter of men, then a man hiding from the world, and now something new, a protector, a builder, a partner to an extraordinary woman. Do you ever wonder if we're making a real difference? Isabel asked, staring into the campfire. We saved those children, but there are so many more out there. I think about something Sarah used to say, Caleb replied. She'd rescue injured animals, birds with broken wings, rabbits caught by coyotes. I'd ask her why bother when there were so many she couldn't save. She'd say, "It matters to this one." "It matters to this one," Isabel repeated softly. "I like that. We can't save them all, but we can save some, and we can teach others to save more. That school, it's just the beginning. Stanton says there's funding for more, maybe one, in every territory. A network of hope instead of exploitation." "Exactly." A coyote howled in the distance, answered by another. The sound that once would have seemed lonely to Caleb now felt like communication connection across the darkness. "Tell me about Colorado," Isabel said. "What do you know about it?" "Mountains instead of desert, cold winters, mining towns full of desperate men and the people who prey on them. Good place for evil to hide." "Then it's a good thing we're not afraid of the dark anymore." They reached the Colorado mining camp 3 days later, after hard riding through increasingly mountainous terrain. The camp, optimistically named Hope's Fortune, was a collection of ramshackle buildings clinging to a mountainside like barnacles on a ship's hull. The sheriff, a worn-looking man named Hayes, greeted them with skepticism that bordered on hostility. "Federal agents. For some runaway brat, seems like overkill." "6 children in 2 months," Isabel said coldly. "That's not runaways, Sheriff. That's a pattern. Mining camps are dangerous. Kids fall down shafts, get lost in the mountains, decide to seek their fortunes elsewhere. It happens." "Show us where they lived," Caleb said. It wasn't a request. Hayes led them reluctantly through the camp. The missing children had all come from the poorest section where families crowded into shacks that wouldn't keep out a determined cat, let alone a Colorado winter. This one was the Hendricks boy, Hayes said, pointing to a particularly derelict structure. Age 10. Parents or drunkards probably didn't even notice he was gone for days. Inside they found squalor, but also signs of care. A carved wooden horse, obviously beloved, left on a makeshift shelf. A child's drawing of a family carefully preserved despite the damp. "A runaway would take treasures like these," Isabel observed. "Maybe he forgot them. Or maybe he didn't leave by choice." They interviewed the parents, finding grief beneath the alcohol and despair. The Hendricks had reported their son missing immediately, despite what Hayes claimed. The other families told similar stories, children who vanished without warning, without taking anything, without saying goodbye. "There's a pattern to the disappearances," Caleb noted that evening, studying his notes. "All taken on nights when their parents worked late shifts in the mine. All from families with no extended relatives, no one to raise immediate alarm." "Someone selecting them carefully," Isabel agreed. "Someone who knows the camp, knows the families." A knock at their boarding house door interrupted them. A young woman stood there wrapped in a shawl despite the relatively warm evening, looking terrified. "You're the federal agents, the ones looking into the missing children." "We are. I'm Isabel Hartwell. This is Caleb Mercer." The woman looked around nervously, then slipped inside. "I'm Rose Murphy. I work at the company store. I think I know something." They sat her down, Isabel pouring her tea while Caleb watched the door. "There's a man," Rose began, hands trembling around the cup. "Mr. Silas Worth. He owns several mines, lives in a big house up the mountain. He has children there, servants he calls them. But they're always different children and they're always scared. Have you seen any of the missing children there?" "The Hendricks boy." "Yes, I delivered supplies last week and saw him scrubbing floors. When he saw me, he started to say something, but one of Worth's men dragged him away." "Why didn't you tell the sheriff?" Rose laughed bitterly. "Sheriff Hayes is in Worth's pocket. Half the town is. Worth owns the mines, the store, most of the housing. Cross him, and you don't just lose your job, you disappear." "Like the children," Isabel said softly. "There's more," Rose continued. "Sometimes fancy carriages come up from Denver. Men in expensive suits. They go to Worth's house and leave with children. Different children than came." The familiar cold rage settled in Caleb's chest. Another trafficking ring, another powerful man above the law. But this time they were ready for it. "Can you get us into Worth's house?" he asked Rose. "There's a delivery tomorrow. Big shipment for some kind of party he's having. I could say you're new workers helping with the load." "That's dangerous for you." Those children need help. That's worth the danger. The next morning dawned gray and drizzling, perfect weather for what they planned. Rose met them at the company store with a wagon loaded with supplies. They'd telegraphed Stanton for backup, but it would take days to arrive. For now, they were on their own. The Worth mansion sat like a castle above the mining camp, all stone walls and narrow windows. Guards walked the perimeter trying to look like gardeners, but fooling no one who knew what to look for. "Delivery!" Rose called out at the gate, her voice steady despite the fear Caleb could see in her eyes. The guards waved them through without much inspection, after all who would dare move against Silas Worth in his own domain. Inside the house was opulent in the way of new money trying to buy respectability. Expensive but tasteless, every surface declaring its own worth. And there, scrubbing the marble floor of the entrance hall, was the Hendricks boy. His eyes widened when he saw Rose, hope and fear warring on his thin face. A man in servant's livery immediately moved toward him, hand raised to strike. "Don't," Caleb said quietly, his hand resting on his gun. The man froze, taking in Caleb's stance, the threat implicit in his posture. "You're not delivery people." "Federal agents," Isabel said, showing her credentials. "Step away from the boy." What happened next was chaos. The servant shouted in alarm. Guards came running, and from upstairs they heard children screaming. Caleb's gun was in his hand without conscious thought, the Colt speaking twice. 2 guards went down. Isabel had pulled the Hendricks boy behind a heavy table, shielding him while returning fire with her derringer. "The children are upstairs," Rose shouted over the gunfire. "3rd floor locked rooms." They fought their way through the house, Caleb leading, while Isabel protected their rear. The guards were well armed but poorly trained, used to intimidating minors, not facing someone with Caleb's experience. On the 3rd floor, they found them 5 children locked in a room that was part dormitory, part prison. The missing children from the camp, plus 2 others they didn't recognize. "We're here to help," Isabel said, kicking open the door. "We're taking you home." But even as the children ran to them, they heard more men coming up the stairs. Many more. "Back room," Caleb ordered, herding everyone into a defensive position. Isabel watched the door. He went to the window using his rifle butt to smash the glass. Below, more guards were gathering, but also unexpectedly minors. Word had spread somehow that something was happening at the Worth mansion, and the families of the missing children had come. "Worth!" Caleb shouted down. "Silas Worth, show yourself!" The man who emerged from the front door was everything Caleb expected. Soft, well-fed, wearing arrogance like armor. "You're trespassing on private property. I'll have you arrested." "We're federal agents, and you're under arrest for kidnapping and trafficking children." Worth laughed. "You have no authority here, Sheriff Hayes." But Hayes, who'd arrived with Worth's reinforcements, was looking at the crowd of minors, at the parents of the missing children. His badge might belong to Worth, but he still had to live in this town. "Let them go, Mr. Worth," Hayes said quietly. "What?" "The children. Let them go. This has gone too far." "You work for me." "Not anymore." The standoff stretched taut. Worth's guards looked between their employer and the growing crowd of miners, many now armed with picks and shovels. The math was changing, and not in Worth's favor. Then a child's voice rang out, the Hendricks boy standing at the broken window beside Caleb. "Papa, I'm here. He took me. He was going to sell me." The crowd surged forward. Worth's guards, seeing which way the wind was blowing, threw down their weapons. Worth himself tried to run but didn't get far. The miners caught him, and what they might have done if Stanton's backup hadn't arrived at that moment was anyone's guess. "Federal marshals," Stanton announced, riding in with a dozen men. "Everyone stand down." The next hours were a blur of arrest reunions and evidence gathering. They found records in Worth's study, another portfolio like Calhoun's documenting sales going back years. The network was more extensive than they'd imagined, reaching into multiple states. "How many more?" Isabel asked Stanton, looking exhausted as she held a rescued child who wouldn't let go of her. "Too many. But fewer now, thanks to you." That evening, as statements were taken and families reunited, Rose Murphy approached them. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for believing me, for acting." "Thank you for being brave enough to speak up," Isabel replied. "What will happen now to the town Worth employed, half the people here?" The mines will be sold probably to multiple owners. The town will survive, maybe even thrive, without one man controlling everything. As they prepared to leave the next day, Sheriff Hayes approached badge in hand. "I failed those children," he said quietly. "I knew something was wrong, but I was too afraid, too comfortable to act." "You acted when it mattered," Caleb said. "Too late for some." Hayes set his badge on the ground. "I'm done being a lawman. Don't have the stomach for it anymore." They left Hope's fortune with the rescued children who had no families to return to, planning to take them to the school in New Mexico. The journey back was quieter, each lost in their own thoughts about what they'd seen and what lay ahead. The journey back to New Mexico stretched before them like a promise. The rescued children huddled together in the wagon, still learning to believe in their freedom. Isabel rode beside them, speaking softly to a girl named Emma, who hadn't spoken since they'd found her in Worth's mansion. Caleb watched from his position at the front of their small caravan, rifle across his saddle, ever watchful for danger that might still come. They were 2 days out of Colorado when the fever struck. The Hendricks boy was first burning up in the night despite the mountain cold. By morning, 2 other children were sick and Isabel herself was swaying in her saddle. "We need to find shelter," Dr. Chen said, having joined them with medical supplies from a nearby town. "This looks like scarlet fever. Without proper treatment and rest, we could lose them." Caleb knew of an abandoned ranch house a few miles off the main trail, a place he'd sheltered years ago during his bounty hunting days. They made it there just as Isabel collapsed, her skin burning with fever. He carried her inside her weight, nothing in his arms but her illness heavy on his heart. "Not again," he whispered, settling her on an old mattress they'd cleaned and covered with their blankets. "Please, not again." Dr. Chen worked through the night, moving between patients with grim efficiency. The children responded well to her treatments, their youth giving them resilience. But Isabel's condition worsened, her breathing becoming labored, her periods of consciousness brief and confused. "She pushed herself too hard," Dr. Chen said on the 3rd day, exhaustion clear in her voice. Her body was still healing from the original wounds. And then all this stress, the fighting, the travel. She has no reserves left to fight with. Caleb hadn't left her side except when absolutely necessary. He bathed her face with cool water, held her hand through the delirium, talked to her about their future, about the school, about all the children they would still save together. "You can't leave me," he said during one of her lucid moments. "We have too much work left to do." She smiled weakly, her hand barely able to squeeze his. "Take care of them, Caleb. Promise me. We'll take care of them together. Promise me." "I promise. But you're not going anywhere." That night her fever broke. Dr. Chen said it was Caleb's constant care, the medicines, the children's prayers, all of it combined. Caleb thought it was pure stubbornness, Isabel's refusal to abandon her mission. Either way she lived, though, recovery would be slow. They stayed at the abandoned ranch for 2 weeks total, turning it into a makeshift hospital and haven. The children recovering more quickly helped with chores and care. The Hendricks boy, whose name was Timothy, appointed himself Isabel's special guardian, bringing her water and sitting with her when Caleb had to rest. "She saved me," Timothy said simply when asked why. "Now I save her." It was during this time that Agent Stanton arrived with news that would change everything. "President Cleveland himself has taken notice of your work," he said, dismounting from a dusty horse. "The reports from Colorado combined with what happened in New Mexico have sparked federal interest. He's signing an executive order creating a new division within the Secret Service specifically focused on crimes against children." "That's wonderful," Isabel said from her bed, voice still weak, but eyes bright with interest. "There's more. He wants you both to head it up. Full federal authority, resources, the ability to recruit and train other agents. You'd be based in Santa Fe, but with national jurisdiction." Caleb and Isabel exchanged looks. This was beyond what they'd imagined, a chance to build something lasting, something that could outlive them. "The school," Isabel began, "would become a federal facility funded and protected. Part school, part training center for agents, part sanctuary for recovered children. The president is particularly impressed with your model of healing through community." "And our past?" Caleb asked. "I've killed a lot of men, not all of them legally. Pardoned, full presidential pardon for any past actions. You're getting a clean slate Mercer. Isabel reached for Caleb's hand. We have to accept. It means a life of danger, constant travel, constant threat. As opposed to the peaceful existence we've had so far. She smiled. Caleb, this is why we were brought together. This is our purpose. He looked at her, still pale from fever, but burning with purpose, and knew she was right. They'd been shaped by loss and violence into weapons, and now they could choose what to fight for. All right, he told Stanton. We accept. The journey back to the ranch took another week, Isabel growing stronger each day. When they finally crested the hill overlooking their valley, they found it transformed. Federal workers had been busy new buildings, going up a proper infirmary, additional dormitories, even a training ground. Maria was first to spot them, her cry of, "They're home," bringing everyone running. The reunion was tearful and joyous. The rescued Colorado children welcomed into the growing family, stories shared and bonds formed. But there was also news waiting, a telegram that had arrived days before. Tom Bradley was dead killed trying to rescue more children from a brothel in Mexico City. He'd saved 3, including a boy who'd been taken from an Apache reservation before being shot by guards. Lily, his sister, had been with him. She survived and was bringing the rescued children north. He died a hero, Isabel said, though tears ran down her cheeks. He died doing what was right, Caleb corrected. That's all any of us can hope for. The funeral was held 3 days later when Lily arrived with the children Tom had saved. She was different now, harder, more focused, carrying her brother's guns, and wearing his badge, the one Stanton had given him, making him an honorary agent. I want to continue his work, she told Isabel after the service. Train me. Let me be one of your agents. You're 17 years old. I aged a decade in those Mexican brothels. Please, I need this. I need to make his sacrifice mean something. Isabel looked at Caleb, who nodded slowly. Lily Bradley had earned the right to choose her own path, whatever that might be. Their first official case as federal agents came within the month. Children were disappearing from Indian schools across the territory, supposedly running away but never returning home. The pattern was familiar now: vulnerable children, isolated locations, authorities who didn't care or were complicit. This time, they didn't go alone. They took a team: Lily Bradley, 2 other agents Stanton had recruited, and Jose, whose tracking skills had proven invaluable. The investigation led them through 3 states, following a trail of forged documents and bribed officials. They found the children in Texas on a ranch that was supposedly raising cattle, but was actually a way station for trafficking victims being moved to ports in Galveston. 23 children from various tribes, some as young as 4, being prepared for sale overseas. The raid was swift and decisive. Caleb led one team through the front, while Isabel and Lily came from the back. The traffickers, caught completely off guard, surrendered without much fight. But it was what they found in the records that truly mattered. Names of buyers, ship captains, government officials who'd been paid to look the other way. This goes all the way to Washington, Isabel said, reading through the documents by lamplight. Then that's where we go next, Caleb replied. But first they had to return the children. Some had families waiting, others didn't. The Apache boy Tom had died saving, whose name was Joseph, chose to stay at the school. I want to learn, he said in careful English. Learn to fight like you fight. Save others like me. It was Joseph who noticed the rider approaching one evening, moving slow and uncertain. Caleb recognized him from a distance, Jake Garrett, or what was left of him. Prison had not been kind. He was thin-scarred, moving like an old man, though he couldn't have been more than 40. Come to gloat, Caleb asked, hand on his gun. Come to warn you, Garrett said, dismounting carefully. I'm dying. Doc says I got maybe a month. Wanted to clear some debts first. You don't owe us anything. Not you, the children. He pulled a leather journal from his saddlebag. Names and locations of every child I helped transport over the years. Some might still be alive, might still be saved. Isabel took the journal, flipping through pages of meticulous records. Why now? Because I'm going to meet my maker soon, and while I know I'm hellbound, maybe this tips the scales a little. Maybe one good act outweighs some of the evil. It doesn't work that way, Lily said coldly. I know, but it's all I got left to give. He turned to leave, then stopped. There's something else. The Calhoun organization, what's left of it, they put a bounty on you both. $50,000 dead or alive. Let them come, Caleb said. They will. Be ready. Garrett rode away into the sunset, and they never saw him again. Word came a month later that he had died in his cell, having returned voluntarily to prison after delivering his warnings. The bounty brought hunters as Garrett had warned. They came in ones and twos at first testing the defenses. But the school was ready. The children had been trained in emergency procedures. The adults were armed and watchful, and federal reinforcements were always within a day's ride. The most serious attempt came on Christmas Eve. 15 men, professional killers hired with Calhoun money, attacked during the children's pageant. They'd planned carefully, thinking the celebration would make the defenders careless. They were wrong. Lily Bradley saw them first, her survival instincts honed sharp. She fired the warning shot that sent children scrambling for safe rooms while adults took defensive positions. The battle was fierce but brief. The attackers hadn't expected former outlaws like Sam Weathers to be present, hadn't expected the older children to fight back with such trained precision. When the smoke cleared, 12 attackers were dead, 3 captured. No children were hurt, though several adults bore wounds. The captured men, faced with federal prosecution, gave up their employers the last remnants of the Calhoun network. It's like cutting heads off a hydra, Isabel said that night, bandaging a graze on Caleb's shoulder. Remove 1 and 2 more appear. Then we keep cutting until there are no more heads left. That could take a lifetime. Then it's good we have a lifetime to give. She kissed him. Then, there in the infirmary with wounded defenders all around them. It was their first real kiss since that night in the ruins months ago, and it carried weight, promised commitment. Understanding that their lives were bound together now in purpose as well as affection. They were married a month later in the school's chapel with all the children present. Maria was flower girl, Joseph carried the rings, and Dr. Chen officiated, having gotten certification for just this occasion. Agent Stanton gave Isabel away while Sam Weathers stood as Caleb's best man. Do you, Caleb Mercer, take this woman to be your wife in danger and safety, in pursuit of justice and moments of peace for as long as you both shall live? I do. And do you, Isabel Hartwell, take this man to be your husband, to stand beside in all battles, to heal and be healed by, to fight the darkness with until light prevails? I do. The celebration lasted long into the night, a moment of joy carved out of lives spent fighting evil. But even in celebration, they were watchful, always watchful. Their work continued case after case, state after state. They found children in factories in Chicago, in brothels in San Francisco, in mansions in New York. Each rescue added to their reputation, their network of allies, their understanding of how deep the corruption ran. 5 years passed. The school grew into a compound housing 50 children at any given time and training a dozen agents. Caleb's hair showed silver at the temples now, and Isabel bore scars from a dozen fights, but their purpose never wavered. It was Lily Bradley, now a full agent herself, who brought them the case that would define their legacy. Children were disappearing from immigrant ships arriving in New York, vanishing between disembarkation and processing. The numbers were staggering, hundreds over just 2 years. We need to go to Washington, she said, spreading documents across their desk. This isn't just trafficking. It's organized, systemic. Government officials are involved at the highest levels. Then we go to Washington, Isabel said simply. The investigation took 6 months. They went undercover, Isabel posing as a wealthy woman looking to adopt a child, Caleb, as her bodyguard. The trail led them through society parties and government offices, through shipping companies and processing centers. What they found was worse than anything they'd encountered before. A ring involving senators, judges, shipping magnates, even members of the president's cabinet. Children were being taken directly from ships, their deaths faked in paperwork, then sold to wealthy Americans and Europeans who wanted exotic servants. The night they were to present their evidence to President Cleveland himself, assassins came for them in their hotel. Not bounty hunters or thugs, professional killers hired by panicked government officials. The fight destroyed most of the hotel's 3rd floor. Caleb took 2 bullets protecting Isabel while she fought with a fury that left 3 attackers dead. Lily arrived with reinforcements just as Caleb was about to fall, turning the tide. We have to get to the president, Isabel said, pressing cloth to Caleb's wounds. If we don't present this evidence tonight, it'll disappear, and so will we. They made it to the White House looking like war refugees, bloodied, battered, but unbowed. The president, shocked by their appearance and the evidence they carried, acted immediately. Arrests were made that very night, senators dragged from their beds, shipping offices raided. The scandal rocked the nation. Dozens were prosecuted, new laws were passed, and the Secret Service's Child Protection Division was given unprecedented power and resources. You've done something remarkable, President Cleveland told them as Caleb recovered in a Washington hospital. You've exposed a cancer that's been eating at this nation's soul. We've exposed one cancer, Isabel corrected. There are others. Then keep cutting them out. You have my full support. They returned to New Mexico as heroes. Though that's not how they saw themselves. They were simply doing what needed to be done, one child at a time, one case at a time. It was Maria now, 15, and training to become an agent herself, who asked the question one evening as they all sat watching the sunset. Was it worth it? All the pain, all the loss? Caleb looked around at the gathered children, some rescued, some born at the school, to rescued mothers all given a chance at life because of their work. Every scar, he said. Every bullet, every sleepless night. But Tom Bradley died. Agent Morrison died last year. You almost died in Washington. When does it end? It doesn't, Isabel said softly. Evil doesn't end. It just changes shape, finds new ways to hurt the innocent. But neither does good. Every child we save, every agent we train, every trafficker we stop, they're ripples in a pond. The ripples keep spreading long after we're gone. So we keep fighting. We keep fighting. That night, as they lay in bed in the house they'd built beside the school, Caleb felt Isabel's hand find his in the darkness. Do you ever regret it? She asked. This life? We could have had something quieter, safer. Do you remember what you said when we first met? That you were filthy inside and out. I was delirious. You were wrong. You were never filthy. You were wounded, fighting, refusing to surrender. That's not filth, that's nobility. And you, the bounty hunter who'd given up on the world, found a reason to believe in it again. Found you. A soft cry from the next room interrupted them. Their daughter, born 6 months earlier, named Sarah after Caleb's first wife. Isabel rose to tend to her, and Caleb followed, watching as his wife soothed their child back to sleep. This was what they fought for, the right of children to sleep safely, to grow up free from predation, to have choices about their own lives. It was worth every scar, every nightmare, every loss. Dawn came as it always did, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. Another day of fighting ahead, but also another day of building, teaching, saving. Caleb stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching children emerge for morning lessons. Some would become agents like Maria and Joseph. Others would become teachers, doctors, builders of a better world. Isabel joined him, their daughter, in her arms, and they stood together watching the sun rise over their small empire of hope. In the distance, riders approached new agents coming for training, or perhaps another case that needed their attention. Ready? Isabel asked. Always, Caleb replied. The riders drew closer, and Caleb recognized Agent Stanton at the lead. His expression was grim, which meant the news was bad. Another ring discovered another group of children in danger. Where? Caleb asked without preamble as Stanton dismounted. Boston. Children being taken from orphanages shipped overseas. We have a lead, but we need your expertise. Isabel handed Sarah to Dr. Chen, who'd appeared as if summoned. When do we leave? Today, if possible. The ship sails in a week. They looked at each other, then at their daughter, then at the school full of children they'd saved. The choice was already made. It had been made years ago in a burning mining camp when they decided this was their life's work. Give us an hour to prepare, Caleb said. As they packed, Maria approached. I want to come. You're not ready, Isabel said gently. I'll never be ready if you don't let me try. Caleb saw Isabel's expression soften. Maria was the same age Isabel had been when she'd started fighting this battle, old enough to choose her path. All right, but you follow orders, no exceptions. Yes, ma'am. They rode out as the sun climbed higher, 5 figures against the vast landscape: Caleb, Isabel Stanton, Lily Bradley, and Maria. Behind them, the school continued its work, a beacon of hope in the desert. Ahead lay Boston, another battle, another chance to save innocence. "You know," Stanton said as they rode, "there are those in Washington who say you two have done enough, that you've earned retirement peace. Peace built on ignored suffering isn't really peace." Isabel quoted Caleb's words from years ago. "It's just cowardice with a prettier name." "Besides," Caleb added, "we'll rest when the work is done." "That could be never." "Then we'll rest when we're dead. Until then we fight." They crested a hill and the vista opened before them, endless land stretching to the horizon, full of danger and possibility in equal measure. Somewhere out there children waited for rescue. Somewhere out there evil plotted in darkness. And somewhere out there hope persisted because people like them refused to let it die. Isabel reached over and took Caleb's hand as they rode their wedding rings, catching the light. They'd found each other in violence and desperation, built love on a foundation of shared purpose, and created a legacy that would outlive them both. "No regrets?" she asked one more time. "None," he replied. "Not one." The road stretched ahead, long and dangerous and necessary. They spurred their horses forward, riding toward whatever darkness awaited, carrying with them the unshakable belief that light would prevail, not because it was stronger, but because there would always be those willing to carry it into the shadows. Behind them, the school bell rang, calling children to lessons. The sound carried on the desert wind a promise that no matter how dark the night morning would come, and when it did, there would be those ready to fight for the innocent, to stand against evil, to prove that redemption was possible for anyone brave enough to seek it. The sun climbed higher, warming the desert, blessing their journey with light. And Caleb Mercer and Isabel Hartwell. Mercer rode on into legend, into history, into a future they were determined to make better than the past they'd survived.